thank you to our public service. This is Public Service Appreciation Week all week, and we do have a public service. We have I talked about it last week. We have fantastic staff here, but public service goes beyond our City Hall employees. It's just a number of people, from our mail carriers to our teachers to our first responders. So Tristan is here, so we're going to do this first, and then we're going to start our meeting, our workshop. But we have all written down just because she would only let us pick one, someone or a group to thank, but I put two on mine.
Better show yours.
We're going to take a photo and.
Sorry.
All right, no problem.
I want that chair in the way. Okay,
That's why you
ready?
don't want me in that chair.
1, 2. Mary, put yours down as a time.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it.
All righty, thank you. And we do want to.
If you hand them to me, if you don't mind, I'll just, so I can see what they all say and put it in the message. The picture might be kind of. Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and get that up on social media, and also continue to share that. So thank you for letting us start our workshop off. We have a fairly light agenda this evening. But, yeah, as far as two items. Two items.
Presentation already.
No, I said a light agenda. I did not say a light workload or a light discussion expectation. So, but before we get into the two items, closed out our last city council meeting with where I laid out three options, kind of as I saw for the future for our vision, and just wanted to talk about that before we really get into our agenda, because I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from each and every one of you, because I think you all know the option that I like the most is investing in the city park, the master park. My hope is that we can stop really harping on the debt, because there is a benefit to it, because we can lay out our destiny, we can plan the city that we want. And I firmly believe that good things are going to happen here in Bel Aire. So like I said previously, I favor the park because we have a way to pay for it. First of all, that's the big thing. So I want to call everyone's attention to, in your pack, and I think you guys all saw it in email, that I sent to Ty Wednesday morning after our last city council meeting, and he forwarded that on. Just the way, again, kind of pulling, and you guys all have a copy of the state of the city as well, and I want to say thank you, because I appreciate how now have full pages of the slides that were in in my presentation, that you can see a little bit better if you want to use those for reference. But kind of going through the three options there. Before I continue, I want to pass around. These are just some things talking about. This was an article that was in the Wichita Eagle. I only have like 2 or 3 copies here. Just, I think on Monday, kind of about a big group that's coming to 13th and Greenwich. We missed out on it because we're not ready yet. But these are the types of things that really talking about the retail together, that we can look at why mixed use is really the next big thing.
Mayor, do you have another one?
No, I only have 3 copies. We're just going to pass
okay.
them around to share there.
Right.
So, but I think I've told you guys, I went to the ICSC conference last year and plan to attend again in a couple of weeks. And already, as a matter of fact, I had a meeting this morning at John T. Arnold, and I'm already planning to attend the following year. And I guess that's kind of how this works, is you go the first year, the second year, you reaffirm that you're there and meet with them and talk with them, remind them that you've already met, which then opens the door to more conversation, which then leads to the actual specific meetings and everything at the next year, where all the deals are done. I'm still learning how this whole process works. So, but before I go, I wanted to hear again from everybody kind of what your ideas are for our vision and for our future, so that when I have these conversations, that I can say here where our city is at and what they're thinking. The other thing too is when I spoke with Stephanie, who is our kind of a representative working with Marlon, the fact at this conference, the fact that a mayor will go or city official goes shows that we're serious, because a lot of people aren't able to have that. So from last year, these are just one of the, I think I told you guys when I came back last year, my suitcase was overweight because of all the materials, and no, I did not turn in that receipt, but I brought all that back. And these are just a few things. I want to just point out, here is the Brighton, Colorado Economic Development Forecast, and this is from last year. And the very first thing that they show is how they're building off of their master park and growing. So just kind of want to pass these around, and certainly anybody can use them, look at these afterwards if they want. This is Santa Ana, California, their development update. And what you see is their very first thing. The mid-size, multifamily, senior housing, we're doing all that. What's the very first thing here? Mixed-use projects. So just to show that it's not, these are things that other cities are doing. It's still on the, the genesis of it. I think we're at the right time, at the right place to kind of move forward with that. This is a development company, an architect that is specializing just now in mixed use now. Are any of these specific designs come in here? No, don't. But just wanted kind of to show you guys, like I said, you can just, which way did I go this time? That way. Just to, if you guys want to thumb through that, you certainly can for that. And I firmly believe that this park is going to lead to retail. And the worst thing that can happen is we have a really nice gathering spot. So I'm going to ask you here if you agree to tell me, and if you don't, if you have a different idea, to please let me know. And I'd like to hear kind of what you like most, what you like least about the options, which option that you favor, if there is one. And like I said, if you have a different one, how you would accomplish that one. My goal is to stop the bleeding of all these special assessments that we're paying. The best way to do that is to put a retail, property taxpayer on some of the land that we have right now. Like I've said, we're never going to recoup the money that we've spent already, even if we sell it all right this very minute. So that's what I'm looking for, and that's why I stand behind my thought as to what we should do. But right now, I'd like to hear from you guys. And again, like I said, if you want to talk about one of the three options that I put out there, if you have your own, would certainly like to hear you. And who wants to? I'm going to ask each one of you. So who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think being aggressive is the way to go. I think pretty much all of us that just got elected ran on the premise of being aggressive to get rid of this land. We happen to have a recognized and honored CFO heading our way here. So, Bel Aire is in a very unique position. I would not recommend this position to any other cities. It's unfortunate the position we're in, but we're in it. Mm-hmm. We need to make the most of it. It's been said we need to not run it like a business. I think we absolutely need to run it like a business. Municipalities don't make money, businesses do. Businesses make money by going out there and doing some advertising and spending. You have to spend money to make money. And because of the position we're in, that's what it's going to take, and to make this successful and to put in Bel Aire what the citizens are looking for. Because like I said, we could sell all this land to one person, and they might hold it for 20 years, and we might not get a drop of taxes from them. Or they may say, well, you lost control of this by selling it to us. We're going to put company XYZ out here that's gonna, cause pollution and everything like that. I mean, I think the city has done a wonderful job in investing in the Commerce Park. And see how that's paid off for the city. So I think, doing this for retail is a very aggressive ploy to get commercial, and which is really what drives tax dollars.
Who wants to?
I can go next.
All right.
If you want. So I'll start off with, I love the vision of the master park. I think that looks amazing, and I love the idea of thinking about that and dreaming about it. I think it'd be a place that our community would really value. I think the community would get a lot of value out of that type of establishment. I'm concerned with using that as an investment opportunity. I'm not sure that I see it making sense to spend $1, $2, $3 million investing in that park for the sole purpose of selling the surrounding lots. Based on what I was hearing from Marlon Penner and Jerry Jones, I heard concern from them about bringing retail into Bel Aire because of our traffic, our number of rooftops, and our proximity to other high-density retail, which makes me concerned that even if we were to make that type of investment, we would struggle to sell those lots for retail. And then if we choose to pay for that by adding an additional tax through a community improvement district or some other increase in sales tax to pay for that, I think that would make us even less competitive to get those retailers in here. So I'm concerned about it from an investment perspective. I don't necessarily have a concern about the park itself. I'm just not in favor of doing it as an investment to sell the land. And I think from a priority perspective and a budget perspective, investing in another park in Bel Aire is pretty far down on my priority list. I appreciated your comments about how we've been able to continue to invest more in our streets. I think that's great, and I think that's the pattern that I would like to continue with. I'd like to see us continue or even increase our investment in our roads, and I think we've heard from our city engineer that we have a lot of opportunity from a sewer perspective where we've got failing sewer lines that need relined, and I think those are really important issues to our community, and we've got to really focus on that before we can invest in more parks. I think some of our existing parks may even need investment before we invest in yet another new park. I think I've also heard from our city engineer that Eagle Lake Park has an issue with the lake where the lake needs to be dredged out because it won't really currently support fish life, and so the fish die off every year, and that's about $1 million project on its own. And so I see a long list of projects, I guess, from my perspective, that would kind of push this further down the list. Even though I love the idea, I think it'd be a great asset for our community just as a gathering spot and a way to build the community. I think people would really value that, but I just don't think that as an investment it's a good option.
I'd like to follow up with that. I agree with everything that's been said so far. My two concerns is with the park concept is it's a great idea, okay, but it's not what we should be doing. Now, if we find an investor that says, hey, they want to take the lead and do this, I'm all in favor of working alongside them, maybe even seeding some projects there and getting some things going that way, where you have an agreement where they're doing the lion's share of the investment, they're doing the lion's share of the risk. But I don't think that the city should be taking that risk. Along those same lines, I talked with some folks, and I've only talked with a couple, I haven't talked with very many, about this concept, and they said typically when those things are done, the investors, they don't go with the city's plan. They go with their plan, and you know, if the city tries to lead it, you'll have a harder time finding investors to come alongside. Okay, the concept is great. Okay, to me, I call it a Bradley Fair light. Okay, because I think Bradley Fair's got some very positive things going on there. You know, and I think that you could do some of those similar type of things here that would be more a Bel Aire type of thing. But I don't think Bradley Fair was done by the city of Wichita. I think it was done by private investors. In fact, I know it was. So that's where I come from on that concept. I think from the land issue, I still say we need to be as aggressive as we can be. I'm not concerned about losing control. We still have zoning right control over the land, and we just we just need to do as much as we can to sell that land as quickly as we can. Take every opportunity that's out there, because, was it 1,500 acres, 15,000? Was it 15,000? 1,500 acres. I wanted to make sure I said that. 1,500 acres. That's a lot of land. That's, I think any opportunity we have to make a sale, we should seize that opportunity and see what we can do to make it work.
Well, I guess I'm going to be the bad penny. On the land deal, I think we should continue as we're going now. We need to have control, and with the Planning Commission setting forth when they have to start building and what they can put in there, we have to be very careful, because we've got some things over there on the corner of 45th and Rock Road I'm not happy with, a lot of the residents are not happy with, but there is nothing that we can do to control what they put in there because of the way it was sold. So we have to be very careful of how we sell this land. I don't think that we should get somebody to come in and just buy a whole lot, because somebody did that in the past, and we already have some land that's been sitting there 2 to 5 years. 5 years at least, before any of us ever got on the board, sitting there vacant, and we're still paying the taxes because they're not building on it. And that makes a big time increase. As for the park, I really think that if we invest in that master plan, it'll bring more roofs, housing development, because these young people that move to Bel Aire, they want a nice new park for their kids to play in, a safe park. And this land's sitting over there, and we paid specials that cost $132,000 a year on that vacant land over there, isn't that right? And we're still paying on it. So why not invest in something over there and have these people come and say, oh, look, they got a new park. I want my kids to play there. But there was one thing that Jeff Elsoff mentioned when we were looking at that. I don't think moving to where all the kids are in one area, because you need an area for like 13 to 16-year-olds where they're kind of off by themselves. They can listen to their boom boxes. Your kids are going to grow up quick. And they're going to say, gosh, Dad, I don't want to go play with the little kids. And that makes a big difference. We need something for the older kids to do in Bel Aire besides, well, I guess they have to go into Wichita if they want a bowl or something like that, which this park doesn't consist of that. But if they had a place kind of like to hang out, I'm not saying no supervision for these kids, but most of the people that I've found in Bel Aire, their children are taught or their kids are taught. You don't just go roughhousing and doing all that stuff. And I think with that park, there'll be more roofs appear around the city hall, because these people are going to say, well, I want close to that park. And people from other areas will probably come to it. Is there anything else? As far as the maintenance plan, I'd like to see us add more money to streets if we can, for the sewer and the streets, because it seems like in the past, since we've had this land debt, we've given up everything for Central Park. I mean, the committee you were on before you became a council member, I griped and griped and griped. How do people get to City Hall? They come down Woodlawn, they come down Rock Road. Most of the majority is going to come down Woodlawn. Wonderful. We got flags on Bel Aire welcoming people. They put Christmas flags up there. I know they probably cost quite a bit of money, But I've had a lot of people from Wichita that I know, well, hey, I drove through Bel Aire the other day going to Hartman's Arena or someplace like that, and you had new flags up. They looked wonderful. Well, even people from Keachai and Park City has commented to me, we saw flags in your city. I said, yeah, we're getting popular here. But still at the same time, I don't want to raise taxes on these people, but I'd like to see more money added to streets if we can through the budget. I think that's it.
Well, I first want to say once again that I really appreciate the vision that Mr. Mayor has laid out here. This concept of these three options, one being a steady as she goes option, two being a fire sale of the land type option, and three being the master plan direction with the park. I do see those as the baseline of what our options are here. So I appreciate that the way this plan or this concept of these options are laid out. I think it's honest with kind of what's on the table and what we have, what directions to go here. There's pros and cons to each option, and I certainly appreciate that. I think this is a real open way of dealing with what's before us. So it's in paper, it's in our hands. We can talk about it. I really appreciate that, because that's where we got to start. We got to know what our options are. I guess what I want to say in regards to each option, my tendency and my nature at this point is to lean towards option one, which is the steady as she goes plan. And my impression of Bel Aire is that it is the reason why we purchased a house here, because it's a quiet residential community with nice sidewalks and parks, and it's away from the city. And that's the charm. I didn't seek out Bel Aire hoping that we would become a retail center or anything like that. Now, that being said, if the citizens and the community, and as we grow, if Bel Aire were to grow and expand into that, that's great. If we I can see that happening, frankly, the way as our steady growth continues, and we see Wichita continuing to come to the northeast. It was mentioned earlier by the mayor about that Greenwich area, Greenwich.
I'm a Chicago boy.
The commercial retail buildings are coming closer to our area. That is happening. It looks like that growth to the northeast of Wichita, we're sort of next in line there. So I see that as, I guess the best way to say it is I see that happening eventually. And to me, it's more a question of, are we going to do things to accelerate that or not? I do see that like 10 years out, 15 years out, I could see a lot more, of the retail kind of commercial areas. I wouldn't be surprised to see that, around Bel Aire or within Bel Aire. So I think the trend is going towards, what the vision is in option 3 with the master plan. I think over time, Bel Aire looks to be moving that way. So, I'm skeptical of the idea that the city is, as Councilman Hawes says, running things like a business and maintaining as much control. My nature is to not pursue that and not want to see that. But I do recognize, and one of the things that I've learned in being a part of this council and just reading up on the, the history of Bel Aire and where things are going, that we do have a unique situation with where we are positioned with owning the land as a city. The argument isn't, hey, we're a city, let's get into the business of controlling land. We're there now. That's what we're at. We're at that point. So as much as, I'm not in favor of that continuing, what can we do to get out of that business? Because I know the desire of the city is to not stay there. And obviously the land debt in general is a big part of that. But I certainly, the idea that we would lose the ability to kind of maintain that, that level of control or whatever, that I kind of struggle with that, because I'm kind of on principle, I don't see that as a city's proper role. On the other hand, we're there, and I understand that, and so my proclivities are to look. I want to make sure the taxpayers are protected, and I guess in that sense, I guess what we're ultimately looking at is dealing with the risk here, the risk of the current debt that we have. Do we want to incur more debt to pay for something such as the park that it's a risky proposition financially, but it has its pros and the fruit that can come out of that on paper can look pretty good. The struggle we have is, do we want to take on that extra risk, and is that wise? And what is the worst case scenario if we build this park and 2-3 years go by and we're not selling it? Like that's what concerns me. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible as to what our what we want, and for me, I do want to maintain that responsibility to the taxpayers, and we all kind of have this optimistic vision, I think, that we share, that we think, yeah, we're selling steady as she goes. That's happening now, so we are making progress, and that's one of the things I kind of want to maybe discuss a little bit when we get into the budget and the future outlay, is some metrics in terms of acres that we own, acres that we've sold over time, and how that is impacting when we make a payment on the debt, how that's impacted over time. And I guess kind of as a baseline, if we were a city that had no debt and we didn't own the land, I wouldn't be in favor of springing to suddenly get into debt to do the park. I don't think, I would hope that private entities or the market around our local community would drive that. Like Councilman Benaj mentioned about looking for private investors, saying, hey, we have this idea. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the past week I did take my family on a research project to Andover Central Park, and that is their new big park over there. Now, for those that don't know or have not been over there, Andover has their library and their city hall kind of right next to each other on the north side, and south of that is a park very similar in scope and concept to kind of what we're looking at with the Option 3 Master Plan Phase 1 park. And they have an amphitheater on the south end, and that kind of helps give perspective. So for anyone that's looking for some kind of physical, well, gosh, what are we really talking about other than just something on a paper, I'd encourage people to just go take a look at what Andover looks like in their Central Park. It's just off of Central Avenue. Because I think the scale of their buildings and kind of what they have there is, I don't mean to bring that up to promote it or to say, hey, we should do that. But I think it's it's similar in vision to what we're talking about with our option 3. So, and it's also new. They've just recently completed it, so the grass is still kind of coming in, and it's not fully completed. But I guess so that's kind of just helped give me perspective and kind of see kind of if we were to go down that option 3 road, kind of what that might result in looking kind of like. But again, you know, I want to do what's responsible for our taxpayers, and I guess one thing I was wondering about was if the park option, is that something that we would ever consider putting in a, like how can we, would that be something that would be put into a vote, like a referendum to the citizens, or what are our options there? We can talk about that later too. I just, that's just a question I'm kind of throwing out there, but maybe we can come back to that. Those are my thoughts right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, let me, I just want to say, I appreciate hearing from all of you, and obviously this conversation not close to being over, but it's kind of all over, which is a good thing, is there's a lot of ideas, and that's specifically, you know, what I want to hear, and hearing, I'd like to just kind of address a couple of things here, and even ask if our city manager wants to weigh in. I'd certainly encourage you to do that, because I'm trying to think even where I want to start here. I mean, let's start with Jeff, because you just finished. You know, something that Jeff said that I wanted to high five you for was when he said we need to be as transparent as we can be. And I think right here, that's exactly why we're doing this. And so I appreciate that. And I also like how you pointed out, you know, if the city didn't have any debt, you didn't know that you would look to borrow to build a park. You know, big word there is if the city had no debt. Yeah, if we didn't have any debt, I don't know, we would not be having these discussions. So that is what I want to do. And you mentioned about wanting to be, you know, responsible, and that's, you know, where I'm at. Like I laid out last week, we've paid for this land. We paid for this land more than once. We're going to continue to pay for the next at least 14 years on it. How can we catapult and get us so that we're not in debt, so that we're not spending half of our budget going towards debt servicing? I want to have that dream. I want to have that vision. Call it optimistic, but it's going to come there. And, you know, heck, we can look at lowering taxes significantly at that point and still doing major road improvements and sewer improvements at the same time, which, you know, heck, we might get national recognition for that. Who knows, you know, here if we could do that. But, and you're right, you know, we're at that point, and you ask, what can we do about it? And, you know, Jeff started off pointing out that, yeah, we're in this position. This is not a position any of us wanted to do, wanted to be in. But it is what we are, and kind of, you know, exactly what you said, you know, Councilman Elsoff, is, you know, we're at this point, and what can we do about it? And that's the kind of the crux of the conversation here tonight. Again, just kind of going down here, you know, Justin mentioned has a lot more interest in increasing spending in roads and sewer and other infrastructure. Just want to kind of emphasize that. You know, Jim talked about, you know, this is kind of Bradley Fair light, and Bradley Fair was done by investors. Absolutely it was. Guess what? The city of Wichita wasn't a small town putting 50% of all their money towards debt payments at that point. So we're as unique as it comes. And that's why, again, this conversation that we continue to have is, what can we do? We're at that crossroads. The city's done a lot of great things over the last few years. We can continue that. I think, catapulting it, and we'll talk about it here in the budget in a little bit, but, paying for this park is done without raising one penny in taxes, at the same time increasing spending towards roads. I want you guys to hear that. So we're doing that at the same time. Who did I talk? Betty, Councilmember Martine there. I appreciate it a lot. What you said, that the master plan here is going to bring new rooftops. And I firmly believe that. You talked about how we're paying these specials and we're going to continue to pay these specials. No one's going to buy, there is no investor in the world who's going to buy the land north of City Hall where this park's going to go right now. But because of the specials that are owed on it, I don't know if we gave it away if somebody would take it. I doubt it. I mean, that's where we are. And that's the way I want to look at that with this park plan again, without raising taxes. That is not something that I will ever push for unless, absolutely necessary, vital. So I want you guys all to hear that. That is not part of why I'm pushing so much for this. And the park that we're talking about is not a park that's going to make money. We're not charging admission. We're not going to have vendors inside and that type of stuff. The idea here is this park is going to make the land a lot more attractive, which will sell it a lot more faster, which will increase the value of the land a lot faster and get us to, again, I'm going to use that word, to stop the bleeding. The meetings we had with, John T. Arnold Group and others, and the conversations I had, with developers from across the country, all say exactly what Councilmember Smith said. Your rooftops are close, but they're not quite there. Your traffic counts are getting there, but they're not quite there. There's a specific formula that you have to fit in before you can even have a conversation with any of these national chains. But with something like this, with a master park, to me, we have now that natural gathering spot. It shows that we're doing something. It shows that we are moving forward, that we're, with the rooftop numbers we have, with the traffic count numbers we have, we also have this, which I think can bring in some retail more. And that's the thing. So we can take carrying this city off the backs of our residents. Like I said, that would be the ultimate dream, would be to stop the bleeding and then lower taxes significantly, because we have retail that we can plan right now. That's the other thing, guys, is we get to plan where it goes and how it's going to be. So that's where I'm at. And I know everybody else wants to weigh in, and then, did you want to weigh in at all?
I would love to if council
I think
would like to be okay with that.
Yes.
So, yeah, I sit around and think a lot about how do we get rid of land, how do we develop. Whenever we work on the budget, it's always this huge elephant in the room that this payment is. And so, and I've got, I've been here for 10 years, and with that comes a lot of history. And I think I support phase one of the park, and there's two reasons why. One is the quality of life piece, which comes with any park. Two is the economic development piece, which a lot of parks don't have. But because of the location, I think that's a big key to it. Number one, the whole discussion of a new park came about because when we did our survey, was that the citizens, all of our parks are basically east of Rock Road. So originally we were thinking over by the high school, a new park, because all of our development's heading that way. And the people wanted, liked the idea of a gathering place, and an amphitheater, those types of things. But then as we started looking at that place, which is basically to the west of the high school, there's some floodplain in there, and that was where we were thinking about developing. That's 15 acres or so. And the previous council looked at, well, what if we moved it over here to across City Hall and then use that for economic development? And so that's where that piece came from and how it actually got over here. So I think in investing in phase one's $1 million, we're looking at $100,000 a year. I think worst case would happen as far as an investment is we get a park. We get a new park that we can start developing, putting features in, a gathering place that we don't have to have everything at the rec center, and it starts the development of the downtown, or whatever you want to call that area. So I think, like I said, from the investment standpoint, worst case is we end up with a nice gathering park area that is an addition to City Hall. And it's something that our citizens have. As Betty said, and a lot of you have mentioned, we spend a lot of money on this land. And we've gotten to the point now, like Ted and I talk, is we do have some money that we can spend on other things. And so you could look at a park as something now that we can do back for our citizens as a quality of life. And of course, we talk about streets as the other piece to that, which we hear a lot about. From the economic development standpoint, what Marlon and Jerry Jones keep telling me is that if we show that we are committed to creating that as a central retail commercial area, then putting in phase one shows the investors that the city says what they're going to do. They've got this nice plan, and that's the struggle we had when I first started with the industrial park. So we had this plan, and we'd show it to all the commercial folks, and they said, that's a nice plan, but I drive out there and there's a wheat field there. Where's my building going to go? And we're saying, well, right here in this lot, well, there's no streets there, there's nothing there. And it was that way year after year after year. And finally, Mayor Smith said, after listening to Marlon, we need to put some streets in. If we're going to sell that and have an industrial park, we've got to do something, because no one is going to buy anything there and invest in that. So we got that first phase in, 100 and some acres, and it just started falling like dominoes. More so than any other industrial park around. Everybody's been shocked at how fast it's grown. And so I think that's where we're at with this. And in fact, we know that there's been some development, and I don't want to discourage the owner of 45th and Rock, but both Jerry and Marlon are saying if you do that, at least phase one of that park, people will jump over that corner and come up to 53rd and Rock, because that's where it's happening. That's where the gathering place is. And I think that it's an investment in phase one. I don't think we'll have to pay for the other phases. If we can get the development like what we hope, and that's why I would recommend only doing phase one, is then we can create a CID. And that's where the sales tax would go to then pay for infrastructure, the next phases, pond, because you're going to need a retention pond, those types of things. And I know there's a concern about added sales tax, but if you look at, there's a CID over at Greenwich and K96 where Cabela's and Target and all those shops are, and that's where we're talking about all the growth is. So I don't know that you can say that because of that extra sales tax, people won't build there, but because that's the place everybody wants to go. So I think if we created that here, I don't know that that would be an issue. But the good thing is I don't have to vote, so I can just give you my opinion and you guys can vote on it. So.
Wants to weigh in.
The only other thing I wanted to say was I did forget about the WSU survey, which Ty mentioned, so I won't go into that. But the majority of the people wrote on that survey that they wanted the park. And we had an open house, or a what do you call it?
Open house.
Open house. And I came to that, and there were several people. I think you were there, weren't you, Jeff? There were several people that came, and they looked at the park, and they looked at sidewalks, and Marlon Penner was there. And they were very enthused about that park. This is what the people wanted at that time. And of course they said, but don't raise my taxes to
Right.
fix it. But if we go on the stuff that Ty was saying, we wouldn't have to raise taxes. And I still think it would be a calling card to get more roofs filled up over here, back west and east, south of us, to get roofs out here. And they're gonna fill up fast, in my opinion. Thank you.
I guess the only thing I didn't really comment on the first time through, I talked a little bit about the park, but I didn't talk about the land sales. And as I kind of thought about the land sales more, I'm inclined to kind of concur with Councilmember Benage when he talked about not being concerned really about giving up control of the land. And really that stems from my faith in our process. I think that we've got a good process here in the city where we've got good zoning practices in place. We've got an excellent planning commission that's very diligent and thorough in the work that they do. And while we may not be able to pick, McDonald's over Burger King in a specific lot, I've got faith in the market that the market's going to put things in a position where citizens are going to value them. And so I'm in favor of a more aggressive approach to selling our land. As I went door to door during the campaign season, there were two things that I heard, from almost every household that I talked to. One is, we're really tired of the city being in the business of developing land. We don't think it's the city's job to develop land. Everyone acknowledges that that's where we're at. I think that was a recurring theme. We are where we are, but let's try and get out of the business side of it. I know Councilmember Hawes talked a little bit about if we're going to be in business, then we need to make money doing it. My only concern with that is maybe we don't have all the right people on staff with all the right expertise to really operate this as a development operation. And if we really wanted to do that, we might need to think about how we're resourced differently as a city and staff, like we're really going to try and make a business out of this land development thing. And I just don't think our taxpayers, and I certainly don't support that. So I guess in short, I would be in favor of a more aggressive plan to sell the land, looking at investors that want to purchase a bigger chunk of it. I'm great with that. I know it may not yield an immediate development, and that land may sit vacant for a while, but it immediately gets the land out of our debt roll, and immediately
we're going to continue to pay the specials then.
Yeah.
we'll continue to pay some specials, but we won't owe the money on it anymore.
Let me pursue,
Well,
ask a question about that.
Can I ask you, hold on one quick. So, can you tell me an investor then?
No, but you mentioned that we've been approached in the past, and we haven't wanted to pursue that.
Yeah, because therein lies the problem is that this land's been for sale.
Yeah.
And we'd love it if an investor would come in and buy it all and do something. And to say that isn't a possibility, I mean, Ty's worked his ass off trying to do that for the last 10 years.
And we've made some good progress with the industrial park, I think, right? We're selling land in the industrial park, and
yeah.
I think we're doing a great job there. And that the industrial park, I think, is a great example of where Bel Aire has something that is maybe more scarce in the area, and that's land that is able to be developed for industrial purposes. And there are some things about the location of our industrial park that maybe make it a little less optimal. It's not right next to 135, which is a preferred location, and our property taxes are 50% higher than if you were down in Wichita. But we have land to build on, and Wichita doesn't. With retail, we're a mile from Wichita. Our property taxes are 50% higher, and then we're talking about potentially adding a sales tax on top of that. And I agree with you that lots of community improvement districts go in, they have a sales tax, and they're successful. And so that's not necessarily something that'll stop us from being successful. I'm just worried about that compounded with higher property taxes and questionable rooftop counts. And if we invest in the park, maybe we're not going to invest in designing it the way they would prefer that we invest in it. We may not build it to the design standards that they're interested in, and that could even exclude us from some possible uses for that land.
So I just want to make sure. So when we look at those three options, yours is more just trying to find an investor and sell it.
It'd be probably 1.5. I'm not going to say that we should take and put all of our land up for auction immediately, but a more aggressive approach than what we're. If anyone's coming to our door and we're turning them down right now to sell the land because we'd like a McDonald's and they're offering a Burger King, I wouldn't want to do that.
I mean, we don't. But that's not what we have right now, is it?
No. So.
Massage parlor.
What? What?
We had one in Bel Aire years ago.
Okay, so anyway, because I'm trying to get a specific vision of what I want to see
Well,
we're
that's
doing
what
here.
happens if you let them have it.
Yeah, it can. You know, we could end up with a trailer park here and a warehouse here and, you know, that's, you know, but if that's the number one goal is just to get rid of land, I mean, we can do that. And that's what, again, these three, I'm not here to say you're wrong or you're right. I want to know, is that what you're wanting to do?
And I guess what I'm saying is that I've got faith in our zoning process and our planning commission that we'll plan appropriately to use those guidelines to kind of govern what goes there, and then the market's going to put opportunities where they fit the best.
So just kind of continue what we're doing right now.
Yes, and anything that we can do to expedite it, I would support.
Okay, so, but what would you say we can do to expedite it? That's what I'm trying to.
I think that continuing to work with Marlon and Jerry to search for opportunities to seek out new investors, if there's opportunities to do advertising to a broader market, supporting some investment there. You know, we've hired some great experts, and I think we need to rely on their advice, and so we need to be soliciting them frequently for what can we do to help you, how can we help you go out and find investors, how can we support you in these endeavors, and staying on top of that is what I'm proposing.
So would you be willing to spend more in advertising then, give them more of some funds to do that? 'Cause
Yeah.
okay. All right. Sorry.
Okay, so a couple of folks have made a comment, if you sell the land, you don't get the taxes. I don't understand where that comes from. If you sell the land, don't landowners have to pay taxes? What's being?
If nothing's built on it, the value is.
Okay, but there's tax revenue from just the land value itself, but I get that.
Yeah, that's what
Right,
we're going
But you're
with.
not talking about, you don't increase the taxes.
Right, we're not.
That's-
If there are specials on the land, though, the land bank is still responsible, or the new owner is responsible?
Until something is built on it, right?
No,
For 3
if somebody
years?
buys land that has specials, then they're responsible for it.
Okay.
But what happens is they don't pay the specials, and because the bonds are guaranteed by the taxing authority of the city, we owe the specials ultimately, because they're not paying.
If they don't pay it.
If they don't
Like
pay.
every-
And then eventually
Exactly.
It would be auctioned off.
So that's where the,
That's
yeah,
what's going
very
on
good
with
example.
everybody right now.
Very
They're
good.
paying it
Yep,
because
yep, yep.
They're not.
So we have risk of owing the specials.
Correct.
When we bond, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. So that's fine. All right, so I've heard from Councilmember Smith kind of what his specific idea, plan is, and willingness. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to, you said that Marlon and Jerry were hesitant. I mean, at the last workshop when they were here, I specifically asked them, I said, what can the city do to help spur commercial growth? And Jerry straight up said, the park plan. That would spur growth. And it's not just those parcels in the park. I just want to point that out. It's, by doing that, as Betty has said, it's going to increase houses. By doing that, it's going to increase the Commerce Park, because there's so many places that are now not just looking at where to build or you know what area, but they're looking at the quality of life for the people that work there as well. So the better you can present the entire town as far as parks go, the better options you have for somebody wanting to go into the Commerce Park as well. To Councilman Elsoff, just a little different perspective from you. You have little kids. I have big kids. You had said, you know, you came to Bel Aire as a residential community, and you liked that. And I'm not talking about putting a Walmart across the street. I'm talking about giving options for the citizens to spend their money in Bel Aire. I would love to not have to go to Wichita every time I need to pick something up. My kids both got to the age of working, and unfortunately, because we don't have any options in Bel Aire, or very few, very limited, they both had to go to Wichita to find jobs. You know, would I like them working down the street? Oh yeah, you bet, if there was just options. And that's what I'm talking about adding, is options for people. There's plenty of spots in Bel Aire that are going to be nowhere near commerce, or not going to be anywhere close to retail. The natural flow of everything is moving to the east. I can see in the future the traffic on Woodlawn slowing down because everybody's switching further to Rock Road, to Webb Road, as both retail, commercial, and residential all go that way because that's the only way we can go. There's going to be natural traffic flow changes in Bel Aire. So, like I said, I just wanted to give you a little different perspective from having, little kids to having big kids.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And then, I know you said that if we were doing it like a business, we should look at changing the way we staff. I mean, I'm not looking to continue this. We're not going to continue buying land and continue in this, but to get out of this, I think we need to change from what we've been doing. I think that, if an investor was to come in right now and buy a big plot of land, they're going to want to pay pennies on the dollar because they're going to want to sit, they're prospecting, they're going to want to sit and wait 10 years, 15 years for Wichita to come up, and then they're going to try to make a huge profit on it. So in that time, we've lost all control. And then you can say that we can keep our zoning and restrictions, but that's going to hugely limit who'd want to buy it anyway. Who's going to want to buy it if they'd have to jump through 20 hoops to be able to do this? So that's why I think, doing this and going on our plan is the best option.
So you're with Phase 1 Park as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What say you three?
Well, as I was listening to city manager speak about, he mentioned the community survey, and Councilwoman Betty, you also mentioned the survey as well, and I meant to mention that as well because I had that wash over my mind. I didn't have a copy with me, but I do recall that the splash pad / park was one of the higher percentage feedback items that came back from that. I know there is, I think something like that, like the park with the splash pad, would be a huge instant draw. I mentioned visiting Andover Central Park. One of the things I noticed right away over there is there's almost no shade. We were out there on a sunny day, and they've got benches surrounding the area where the kids are. They've got a couple of very small trees. But there's, as a parent, when you're sitting, or even if you're just milling about in the play area, there's no shade. I was like in the castle fort with the kids to get shade, right? So, and
So Wyatt has little kids too.
And I don't believe they have a splash pad over there. I know that's one thing that's in the park that we've been talking about in the Phase 1 is having a splash pad there. And, just speaking for my own family, but I would think there's so many young families in this community. I think a splash pad, if it were to be out there, if we were to take the risk of pondering that, I think that would be a big popular draw. There would be cars out there. I could see it. This is kind of one of those in terms of risk here, that if you build it, they will come kind of thing. I hate that phrase, but we've got, if you think, we've got a commodity here, and obviously it's our land, and just like if we had a car that we were going to sell, we'd want to make sure that it was as clean as possible, it was presented as best, and that is what the Phase 1 park is doing. It is creating that, even Councilman Smith acknowledged that the industrial park, as it's up and rolling now, it's something that's continuing to foster growth. But it's not lost on me that what city manager mentioned, and I know the mayor has mentioned it a lot, about putting in the streets and stuff is what it took to get the ball rolling on that. And, you know, I appreciate that. You know, it's, you know, again, you know, when you put it in the way of what do we end up with, worst case scenario, assuming the park is built properly and and all of that we end up with a park, and, you know, well, it's a park and some additional debt that we will be paying on. But, you know, I guess we all like the park idea. The question is, how fast do we want to try to improve that used car we're trying to sell? You know, we use the term investment, right? Investing in the park, because it could foster more homes, that land being sold, and the development there. And I appreciate that. I think the more we talk about it, and, you know, Mr. Mayor brought in these pamphlets and examples from other cities. You know, the vision I keep having in my mind is the movie Back to the Future. Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, right? The clock tower building is always there, and they've got that park changes over time, but you know, the area around it. I mean, obviously that's kind of what we're talking about, potentially being created. And I don't necessarily like thinking of it as downtown. It's not really quite that. You know, when I first moved to Bel Aire and saw when I had to go pay my water bill, and City Hall is way the heck out here. So I live just off of Oliver. So when you live over by Oliver, coming over to Rock is kind of like crossing the country, right? You got to cross the entire
Might as well go to
city.
West Wichita.
Yeah. So you know, it's kind of we're kind of on the outskirts of the frontier here, right? And that's the way it's been. But, you know, growth is happening slowly, and it is a question of, I guess, that additional risk, and then speeding up the timeline. Because I think, like I said, the way our growth is currently going, and the way things kind of seem to be happening, it's a question of, well, do we want to turn up that timeline? Can we do that? Is that a responsible thing for the taxpayers? And I think we've all expressed that our desire is to not raise the mill levy and not increase taxes with that. I think that's great. I mean, that's what I want to hear as a resident. So I guess you know, I struggle with it, balancing between the kind of the option 1, steady as she goes, and option 3 with the potential pros and cons of the park option. I don't know, I guess that's all I have to say about it right now.
I appreciate it. And I liked your analogy about a used car. I had not even thought of that. I might have used that earlier to try to sell.
Well, that's how it is in park phase one.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Semi-question suggestion. Marlon says that potentially if we would do this park, or at least the phase 1, that there would be investors jump over there. How about Marlon presenting this park plan saying, hey, if you will partner with us now, we'll do this now? Is that something that we can pursue?
I mean, I could ask it, you know, what he would think about that, or what his thoughts on that would be. When you're saying partner, are you saying that they would help pay for that? Or are you saying if we would do phase 1, would you build here?
If they will agree to build here.
Okay.
Based upon us building phase 1.
Okay.
I mean, something, a contractual commitment.
Right.
Does he have investors that would be interested in that?
Okay.
I mean, present the whole thing. I mean, you got a great marketing pitch here, okay? So present the whole marketing pitch and say, can we make a deal? Can we come together and do something?
Okay.
Because, like I said, I'm not poo-pooing the plan. I think it's too much of a risk for the city to just take it on its own, okay? But if the investors are saying, yeah, we like that, we want to do that, then let's go.
Sure, I could ask him.
Yeah, potentially we could even put an agreement in place so that, we'd all pre-agreed to invest in that space and build the park plan conditional on, that land being sold to somebody
So
that's gonna
almost
build on
like
it.
a contract that's an option,
Yeah.
like an options contract.
I hope it's stronger than just an option.
Well, but
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
it's gotta be that way, because if we don't do it, they're gonna be like,
Yeah.
Well,
But I also think a business that's wanting to come in is gonna, well, okay, I wanna build there, but I don't wanna wait for a year for you to finish the park. Our idea is that we're doing this, it's coming, you get in line and, with us.
well, I think that's kind of what he's saying though.
Yeah, so you're still, were there one of the three options that you want us to kinda?
Well, basically, I'm at option 2 still.
Okay.
But, I'm willing to consider this option 3 if we can get some investors to come alongside us to do
Okay.
it. I think that's a way to go about option 3. I just don't think we'd be wise to just do it and hope that the investors will come along. I'd say, if Marlon knows investors that might make that jump, let's go and talk with those investors today instead of saying,
A question that I have, or just maybe question / thought that's going through my mind. We were successful as a city with the industrial park by putting in the roads and pre-developing that so that people could kind of imagine what could be and see where their building would go. There's a whole lot of industrial land to sell. When I look at the information we have on the land here by City Hall, I think it's only 12 or so acres. And so I guess a question in my mind is if there's enough even acreage for sale to kind of justify that investment. One of the things that I'm thinking about, I think Marlon had commented that like in its current state as it sits, it's maybe worth $100,000. And a lot of that's probably due to, maybe nobody wants to buy it because of the high specials.
That's exactly, you're right on.
And so, as it sits, it's maybe worth $100,000. If we spend $1 million on phase 1 of the park, that'll help us sell $100,000 of land. And that's something that I'm just kind of struggling a little bit with it. I understand it'll maybe raise the value of that land some, but as it sits today, we'd be investing $1 million to sell $100,000 worth of land. So I'd be curious on thoughts on that.
Yeah, I speak to that a little bit, and I think looking a little too short-sighted here. That's the, we mentioned the WSU survey a couple of times, which talk about Wichita State University. When President Bartow came in, look at what's happening at 21st and Oliver. Holy cow! All the stuff that's being built and going into the WSU campus is only because President Bartow came in and had a vision greater than, and he saw, there's a golf course there, that land, yeah, it's a nice golf course, but we can make it a heck of a lot more profitable and better and make the campus as a whole and the university as a whole more attractive. And I applaud him for that, and I think that's where, looking at with that, raising that land, but it's not just that, it's then around it, growth begats growth, then you have, this one that grows, and then, before you know it, they're all, because that's where people are wanting to come, and it's not just those 12 acres that are going to increase, it's going to be the slow tide rising, but that is, what I'm trying to think is big vision here. And, when Councilmember Martine talked about it, she said, hey, people said, don't raise my taxes. I want you guys to know, I wouldn't bring this to you if that was an option. We're not, that's nothing we're going to do. And if this, park could really be our calling card. I really like what Councilman Elsoff said too. Yeah, if you're getting ready to sell a car, you're all of a sudden going to polish it and clean it and make it spiffy for that. So
But I may not replace all of the panels on it.
you may
I may
not.
not rebuild it.
You may not. You may not.
And so,
I'm not buying a car from you.
that's what I'm struggling with is, how much of an investment, if we were going to make an investment, which I struggle with philosophically because I don't think the city's the best entity to be investing in land, but if we were going to make an investment, what would be the right level of investment for the return?
Well, I know when we were talking about the land, they were talking about the 12 acres worth $10,000 an acre as it sits. And when you start making it into commercially viable land, you're talking about selling it per square foot instead of per acre. So, you're taking that and say there's a multi-use project that wants to put in, a 20,000 square foot building, and you're talking about $5 per square foot for that 20,000 square foot building, then that one building is doing 100,000. And then, you multiply that by the 5, 6, 7, 8 buildings that can all, be withstood there. But again, as he said, growth begets growth. I mean, you're talking about more than just those 12 acres.
Another thing to keep in mind too is, another thing that I know a lot of us here hate, with incentives and everything, but to get something going, but with retail, you cannot tax abate them. Okay, so that's something else to keep in mind too.
And retail commercial pays 30%.
Yeah, so.
Versus 11.5%.
On assessed value.
All right, so that's not something where we're going to be able to say, hey, we're going to give you a 10-year, 100% tax abatement. We cannot do that by state statute. It's where, I know we talked about kind of with the the CID. So that's something else to keep in mind, guys, is if you're thinking, retail comes in, they're paying taxes right away.
I just got something from Jerry, and I'll send out, Jerry Jones, because I asked him to put together, based on what he saw as a layout for commercial retail, and he did that, and he kind of came up with a square footage for each building, and then we then took that times the 30% valuation, and then we kind of put some numbers together on how much tax revenue we bring in every year, when it's full. So I'll send that to you guys so you can kind of see that.
That'd be great.
Helpful.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the conversation. Definitely a lot of opinions here. I think Phase 3 wins, but not by majority. Or does by majority, but not a unanimous or even. But yeah, if the city manager can send that out, and if any of you were to change your thinking on that, if you please let me know. But
Well, the other thing I might ask is, hopefully people watching at home or listening to this and thinking about it too, I'd just ask for some feedback from the citizens of Bel Aire. If you guys would please contact one of us and share your thoughts, I'd be really interested in, some specific community input on this topic.
appreciate that.
Is this in text available online right now? The mayor's.
That's what I emailed to you.
I know, but I mean, for citizens, do they have access to this on the website?
No,
They do
we
not,
can do that.
but we emailed it to all of you, so it's open record. If you share it, I can't say anything.
So, so I have a question for you. You said you were talking about how, is it Jerry that sent you with the link? Now, thinking about that as far as future expenditures go, can we maybe kind of see a future breakdown? And this would come from you.
That's what I'm gonna do tonight.
Okay, with this included, with the sales?
I can
and
put
everything?
anything in there. That's why I set up the projector, so
Fantastic.
we're gonna have fun tonight.
That's what I'd like to see. Obviously, best case scenario, we have 50 people wanting to be over there, and we pick and choose who we want, and it all sells, and we're making this, and we can do this. But if we could even look at going from nothing where we are now to, let's say, we half fill it, and then and just kind of projections of how much, if it helps us pay the rest of the land down faster, whatever the case may be. So
I'll try to address a lot of those questions. A lot of that's pretty mathematical and guesswork on my part, which is very hard. And we'll get in my spot. I'll talk to you a little bit about my role in the city and how planning stuff like that is very difficult, but it's doable.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I think let's move us into the agenda then. Again, I appreciate you guys, having this civil discussion and different ideas and opinions here because, we all have different opinions. Even those of us who were agreeing had a little bit different reasons why you were agreeing with whatever way. But I'm going to kind of move forward with the majority liking the idea of phase one. We're not breaking ground tomorrow or anything like that, so don't get super excited. But at least we can move forward as we have some of these conversations. And again, city manager will email that out and welcome if any of you guys do change your mind. I would ask you to just let me know, and we'll move forward as that. I mean, this is what democracy is all about, so I do appreciate that. But let's get us back onto our agenda. The first item is communication. I'm going to ask Councilmember Benaj. You had asked that this item be up for discussion tonight. Kind of talk a little bit about what it was that you were wanting to talk about.
And I want everyone to understand, I am not trying to be critical of anybody on anything here. I think everybody's been doing what they think are the right things to do or are required to do because of ordinances or such things. But there have been 3 incidences in the last month or so that I think have been indicative of a concern of communication, okay? And the first one that's the bigger one in my mind is the Elk Creek project, where we were trying to do the 9 lots and replat those. And when the citizens got wind of it in the area, they said, well, wait a second. And now the HOA, the homeowners association, is involved in discussions with it and say, well, what are we doing here? But they did not know about it until a city council meeting when it was brought up it was on the agenda for the city council meeting. And I understand the procedure for communicating is that you publish these things in the Ark Valley News, and that was the reason I asked that the minutes be corrected from the April 17th meeting, because unfortunately, and I'm not faulting him, but Mr. Schmidt had misstated that. He said that it was published in the Bel Aire Breeze, and that's why I wanted to correct it in the minute, because again, not faulting him. I think it's just an honest mistake on his part, but I don't know what we can do about that. But let me move on. The second item that came up is the Aurora Park issue, where there's a lot of citizens very concerned about what is being proposed there. I think the communication on that one is probably more a lack of information from the developer, which may or may not be anything that a city person can do about, okay? But but there's a lot of citizens very concerned about that project. And the third one was one that Councilmember Elsoff had brought up, was on the water bills and having water shut off. And so I just want to see what we can do, considering what kind of things we can do to help improve communication in these areas, so we don't have citizens unnecessarily upset about what are we doing as a city, okay? So, and I think we all know these things, but just to reiterate them, communication is always best in person. That's why we like to have these workshops, because we can have that communication. Second is video. You still get the voice inflection. You still get the body language. You just don't have the personal contact there. Third is telephone. You still get voice inflection, but you don't see any of the body language. You don't see the facial expressions. Okay. And the worst communication is written. And unfortunately, and not to fault our legal people, but unfortunately, most of the legal requirements are all written communication. So you probably all heard the stories about the emails that people go ballistic about, that there's nothing intended to be insulting about, but they were read that way. And so I'm wanting to see if we can't look at, and I'm looking for ideas here because I don't really know the answer. I'm just saying, I'm feeling some problems, some concerns from citizenship. Look at how we can improve that communication. You know, can we pick up the phone and talk to somebody if the water bill is about to be turned off? Can we do something a little more, a step with neighboring landowners when we're talking about replatting something? Yeah, we're not required to by law, but can we do something to help them know what's going on a little better? And again, I don't have the answers. I'm not saying I do. I just wanted to throw these things out on the table and say, hey, who's got ideas?
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I want to talk. The first one, and I'm going to ask City Manager and Tristan to weigh in if I missed something here, but going down the line, as far as, Elk Creek with the HOA there, yeah, we put it in the legal paper by law, but there's a lot of other things that we did too. First of all, we pre-sell all of our city council meetings and workshops on our social media page. We're hiring MKEC to do the replatting was on one of our agendas, 3 months ago? 3 months ago?
January.
Yeah, in January, so it was, a pre-sale. It was, highlighted after the meeting on all of our social media channels. It was on our video that's replayed and available online. We talked about it there, had a vote on that on the public agenda. And also, guys, I'm not going to fault our city for this because we told the homeowners association president and their executive people back in October that this was coming down the pike. I don't want, it would be unfair to ask our staff to go knock on the door of everyone in that subdivision to say, hey, by the way, if you missed it on social media, if you missed it in our city council meeting, if you missed it in our legal publication paper, and if your HOA didn't tell you what we told you, we want to tell you. And were there any other steps that I missed with that? But Councilmember Benaj brings up a good idea. Is there something else we can do? And I think that's what we want to see that conversation. And we just ask it at one point, when is it the citizen's responsibility to know what's going on? That's something that we wrestle with all the time. I can't tell you how many times Tristan and I both have gotten a phone call and holy cow, we've all but put something in skywriting and I didn't know. We even have people say, well, I don't know, when something was put on a door knocker on their front door because they entered their house through the garage and didn't notice something hanging on their front door for 5 days. That, honest to God, happened. That's something we struggle with, and I think we've made tremendous leaps and bounds strides in communicating things that are coming up through our app, through our website, through the video, through our videos being replayed, through even further explanation before and after the city council meeting. There'll be something up on social media tomorrow, highlights from what we talked about tonight. It's it's out there. So Roar Park, don't know too much about all the where we are with that. I've not heard one complaint. No, I did get one email from someone and we responded to them. But as far as water shutoffs, they've gotten 3 or 4 notices before it's shut off, and one of the notices even says the time, date, they know the place of when it's going to occur. And I think they're avoiding not paying the bill isn't for something like that. So yeah, and you say can we pick up the phone? I've got to imagine that, holy cow, I can't tell you how many, if I get a call and I don't recognize the number, I'm not answering it. And then you've got I didn't get your voicemail. I realized realizing as I'm speaking here, I changed my home phone number to a Google Voice number, 2 years ago? I bet if I go look up my water bill record right now, it has my original 7448197 number on it that I haven't had for 5 years, but that was my number when I turned on the water 12, 13 years ago. And to have staff make all those calls and try, I think, and additionally, they've gotten all the notices, but you then also expose our staff because people aren't going to be happy getting those phone calls, and we could then put our staff in a real predicament, what are you going to do about it? Or making them to feel guilty or, I think we could put them in a real uncomfortable situation. But if you guys want to change any of the policies for that, we can certainly have that conversation. But
Mr. Mayor, could I comment on that?
Please do.
I know I worked in water department for 28 years. Everybody knows their water bill is due on the 10th at 5 o'clock. They let them have till the next morning to put it in the drop box. On the 11th, they put a penalty on. It's 10%. On the, I think, 15th, they send out letters, personal letters to each person, address, and mail them. Now, I feel sorry for these people if they don't realize, well, you know what, I gotta pay that water bill. Otherwise, they're gonna shut it off and charge me. Well, everybody knows that you all, like myself, have utilities. They're all due at a certain time of the month. In the letter, it does say, if you're having a problem, call, and it gives the water department number, and they can call them and make an exception to the rule. If they call, they won't be shut off. If they have a hardship, they're out of town, they're on vacation, they have a crisis in the family, and if the water clerk can't handle it, she'll take it to Mr. Lasher, and he gives the okay or no. But she's allowed to give one extension, isn't it still one? Extension, and then they can promise to pay. If they say, okay, my water bill is $300, which I hope it isn't, I can only pay half. Okay, when can you pay the other half? She can get an okay from Ty, or maybe she still has the okay to do that, and say the next payday's 2 weeks away. She can give them that extension. There's no penalty charged, or she can reverse the penalty one time a year, and then the rest of the stuff she has to clear through Mr. Lasher. But I think the water department and all these staff employees are doing way above and beyond, because if somebody came in and said, well, when my parents passed away, if they're shut off, she still has the one-time penalty to refund the shut-off notice. I mean the amount.
If it's the first time, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, if it's the first time.
Yeah.
There's a formalized process and there's a lot of steps.
One
So
time a year.
yeah, make sure you come inside and
Yeah.
Amy will
How
explain
many
to
weeks
you.
go by before water is shut?
I think the real issue on this particular one is it's a matter of we close at 5:30 and we don't open again until 7:30. If someone pays online in between that time, there's nobody in the office to catch that payment. Now, if you guys want to propose paying someone to stay there all night and make sure a payment comes in, that would resolve a certain issue. And that's what I say is, when do we draw the line? And we happen to draw the line at 5:30, and then you can come back in at 7:30. Because what happens is some people leave theirs off for 3 or 4 days. Should we staff 3 or 4 days after every shut off, So that's kind of where we drew the line, and that's where a lot of the confusion came, because I believe they paid after that we closed, so nobody knew that.
And we don't shut off on Fridays, do we?
No, we do not. Yeah.
So,
And Tristan, she could explain it, but she when she was new, she did that 1 month as called
I
people.
had to cover for water one time. I'm sorry. I I did,
interest, yeah.
when I used to work front desk and we had a utility clerk and she was gone and I had to cover for water disconnect. And I did not want to do it. I wanted to avoid that confrontation at all costs. And I did. So that morning I called every single person on the disconnect list. And I think I got a hold of maybe one person. I can't even remember. But I remember either we don't have their most up-to-date contact information or they didn't answer their phone. But and honestly, I just remember thinking, this did not work like I had planned. I wanted to try to get a hold of as many people as I could, and it didn't work out. So we still had to shut them all off.
Well, like I said, I think everybody knows they have utility bills. If you have a problem, call the people. They're not going to come through that phone and bite you.
Right.
And if you have a good enough excuse, you can say, well, I can't make it there till 5:30. Can you hold this till in the morning? I'm sure he will, or Mr. Lasher will let them go ahead and do that. I've had people that went out and shut them off when I was working here, and this guy came out the door and chased one of the maintenance men with a broom because he was shutting his water off. Well, he knew he was on that list. And there's some people that are repeat.
But I mean, they have to be a couple months behind before we shut off, right?
No.
No. We take the water policy very seriously. That's my staff. I say by the letter of the code. We got to treat everybody the same. So very rarely will we make a lot of exceptions because simply you make exception for one, another person doesn't get it. It's not good business to be in. So we work very hard to go exactly by what the council directs us to do, and that's what we do. So a lot of our discussions is about that, and if we want to, and a lot of times if someone has an issue with water policy or not necessarily policy, but prices and whatnot, what we did last year was a gentleman came in and I said, you know what, let's look at it, me and you, and then we took it to the Water Advisory Committee, and they know a lot more, and then it eventually came to the council. So that I really want to stress the importance of citizens using the Utility Advisory Council Committee. I think it's a great resource for them to ask their questions, because a lot of times they'll ask us something and we don't have quite the power to say anything about it because we're restricted about the code and what's in it. So I really like the citizen-to-citizen contact on that committee.
Yeah, I just want to echo that theme that both Councilwoman Martine and our finance director Ted had to say, and that is that I just want to encourage everybody that if you do know of some reason where you're not going to be able to pay the bill, please try to contact the city ahead of time. I think sometimes we're kind of wondering, will they really do anything? Or it's people that are working here. And obviously there's extenuating circumstances, and sometimes you might just forget or something. But if you know you have a hardship or something, I have heard many times from the city staff here that if you know of something coming up, please contact them and let them know that, hey, I might miss a payment this month. They will work with you. They will try to come up with a solution.
We have a formalized payment agreement that you can come in. Our staff will explain it all to you, and it's very formalized. Everybody gets the same treatment and the same agreement. There's not one person that I know of in my time here that has said, "Yep, we'll skip that payment and we'll get you next time." Everything is a formalized agreement. So I know it's. Yes, there's I actually don't even know one that's came to tie. Maybe a leak that was on our side or something. But we don't usually make exceptions unless it's a payment agreement or something written out in code. So I don't want to broadcast that we're willy-nilly doing payment exceptions, okay? Everybody.
So we have a policy in place, yes. and we need to follow it, and that's important, and that's, everyone needs to be treated the same, and that's what's important here. So.
And like you said, they just come in and fill out an application for hardship and set up a payment plan, and happy to do it.
I mean, as far as communication, I don't think the city should take on any undue burden. I do think that, if people want to be informed about what's going on in their town, there's a lot of options, but they, do have to do a little work themselves. Read the paper, check the website, follow the city on Facebook, Instagram. I mean, there's a lot of options out there that inform people of what's going on. And for somebody to say, I don't know about this going on or this going on, I mean, there's too many things. This went in front of the planning commission. A lot of things go in front of the planning commission. I mean, it's months in the works before it ever gets to us.
So how many people do you know that get the Ark Valley News?
Everybody in Bel Air does, not the Ark Valley,
No.
but they get the Breeze.
Okay, so who gets the Ark Valley News? Because that's where the publications are.
Right.
That's
You
when I
have to pay for it.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah,
So who gets
but
it?
you cannot use a monthly paper for legal publication per state statute.
Okay.
So that's our only option really. That you have to use a
Yeah.
weekly
So-
or a daily paper.
So unfortunately,
Right.
and don't take this the wrong way, but unfortunately, we kind of sidetracked the conversation. Thank you for bringing it back to communication, okay? Because I wasn't really picking on the water bill thing. I wasn't picking on
Right.
the Elk Creek thing. I was just saying, we need to find better ways to communicate with our citizens because, yeah, we have all these formal things in place, but at the end of the day, it's not working.
So what else do you suggest that?
And that's why I brought
Again,
this to,
people need to take it
ideas.
upon
Okay,
themselves to
because-
know.
Hold on.
Because there's something broken. And I'm not saying that I know the answer here, but just something's broken. When we have this different, coming from three different areas, concerns about communication, something's not working. I don't know the answer. I'm not saying I do. I just think we need, and maybe we need to think about it each individually and come back to at us another time and say, hey, here's some ideas of what we can do that maybe will be better.
One thought that I have, or one question is, I think there are some differences in notification policy, especially with regards to anything zoning or planning commission related. I think there's differences in how notifications work. The question I have is that something that's regulated by the city code or by state statute? Do we have control over that?
So the minimum requirement for planning and zoning is generally set by state statute, depending on what you're doing. Because we're a city of the second class, the state has specific statutes that we have to follow. We have to publish an official newspaper. We have to give a minimum of 20 days notice for certain types of zoning, like a new plat or certain types of zoning activities. However, the code follows up by codifying that and also sometimes adding additional requirements that the city can choose to impose.
So we can exceed the requirements if we
You
choose
can't
to.
exceed the requirements.
So one idea I might have would be to think about taking the kind of lowest common denominator for notifications, the most aggressive notification strategy that we have, and applying that to all of the changes so that we're consistent with when we're going to be making a zoning or a planning change, that we're always notifying people in the same way. Sometimes I get a letter in the mail and sometimes I have to go check the Ark Valley News. If we were maybe consistent across all of those different types of changes, maybe communication would be more effective.
I think don't we have to notify people within 200 feet
In certain instances, yes.
by certified letter?
Yeah, but not in all
And
instances.
so that's the highest standard generally is going to be within 1,000 feet, I believe, for the most serious zoning matters, like annexation.
And if you're going to
And that
send
might- but
everybody a
that's-
certified letter, that's going to cost.
And so that can be a really stringent standard. And then keeping in mind that sometimes if it's something that would go before planning commission, but maybe a delicate, like you might have some access to trade or business information, a city that's moving into the city, or a business that's moving into the city, that lower standard allows you to kind of negotiate so other competitive cities don't get that information before you've had a chance to look at it. That's why some of those requirements are there. I understand that the
Yep.
cases you're talking about, that's not
And it,
what's there.
It may not make sense to send everybody a certified letter. I'm just wondering if if part of the problem might be there's so much inconsistency. I think in some of these cases, there may have been an expectation that if this type of change were going to happen, that I would get a letter in the mail, and people didn't necessarily get a letter in the mail, and maybe there's an opportunity to be more consistent there, and maybe that's even something our planning commission would want to review and evaluate related to those changes.
When do the water bills go out?
I mean,
What do you mean go out?
oh, they get.
Billing's right
mailed
now
on
this week,
15th.
so yeah.
They get mailed out around
They
the
mail
15th.
out the 15th?
15.
What about putting a notice in the water bill for a month?
Kind of like bullet point items, here's the.
Yeah, a bullet point, because everybody gets a water bill, whether they pay it online or by the bank or whatever, correct?
What kind of bullet points of what are you talking about?
What's gonna go on for the month? See, on the 15th, you could go from the 15th through well, she doesn't mail them till the 15th, so that wouldn't work. But you could go from the 1st till the 30th, or through the next 15th.
Kind
A
of
month and a half, but you may not know what's gonna happen.
And then if you set that expectation, and then something comes along that would need to be added
Yeah.
after that fact, is that expectation control? Does that set your standard? Or the legal?
Make a suggestion that I might have now that, especially with the way everyone's going in the future is, I mean, it's here with, with phones and with social media, is that maybe we ask or I can even put it in my column too, and ask our reporter at the Bel Aire Breeze to write an article encouraging everyone to, if they don't already, to follow us on Twitter, to follow us on Facebook, to download our app. Because again, I asked the question, at what point does it become the residents' responsibility to know what's going on? When, I mean, short of us knocking on every single door and making sure we have a face-to-face with everybody, because even with that article and encouraging people to do all that, we're still going to hear from people I didn't know. I go back to we will never, ever, ever get everybody with this.
But the only thing with that is, a lot of people don't have computers anymore. And they don't do Facebook, or they don't do Twitter and all that stuff.
Well, I just want to add some of my perspective in there, just coming from handling the communications aspect. Now, I don't handle all the planning and zoning communications with the publications in the Breeze, and I mean in the Art Valley News and things like that. But the process, I feel like, did actually work to get those homeowners in here and talk to the city council, which was really important in that. We did have some extra things that said that was coming up on the agenda at the city council meeting, and those things were out there for them to see on our social media if they were looking. But they got here and they were able to do the voice, face to face as a homeowner, share their concerns with that there. So that process, I feel like, actually worked in a way to get them here in the building. And that was the place they need to share those concerns, because we don't necessarily want them sharing those concerns on a social media. Because I'm not here every meeting, I'm not reading those comments to you. I mean, I try to share those in my reports, but those can come at different points through the process. So I think in a way, that process did do its job. I understand they wish they would have known earlier, but I guess they could sign. We do have the option of signing up to get agendas for each of the commissions. Stacy sends out those agendas for each of those. They can see what's going on in those individual places. But I do think we actually do an overall really good job of communication with our residents. We are at an all-time high with public engagement on social media and our website, and people are able to, we're really seeing what they're going on there and navigating through. So I feel like we are doing a good job.
Well, Tristan kind of stole my thunder a little bit, because I was going to point out right before she spoke up, and thank you for speaking up on that. I was gonna just point out, Councilman Benaj, you used the word broken to describe the system. Is the system broken for
It's a
communication?
question.
Right, as a question, and that's fair. I was gonna just say, is it really broken? Our process, we, you know, we did get the feedback from the residents that were concerned. Now,
And we were able to table it.
perhaps it was last minute, and that they showed up at the, you know, we got emails from a couple of the residents, and they showed up at the meeting, and we were able to have a discussion. They were able to express their view, you know, and then the following meeting, we had even more residents show up. So that's what I kind of wanted to point out is are we really just gonna, are we all just assuming that this is broken, this didn't work, when in many ways it actually did work? A whole bunch of citizens that were concerned found out and showed up at the meeting. I mean, that did happen, and that we, like you pointed out, we tabled the issue and we delayed it a whole month. There's communication between the city, the concerned citizens, and the homeowners association that, you know, that issue is currently being hashed out. It's going to come before us in June, as I understand it.
Yep.
So I don't want us to be necessarily jumping on board. Oh my, this didn't work, when it did work. We didn't make a decision without those residents expressing their concern. Now, it was sort of, you know, the emails we got was like the night before the council meeting. So, and I think there was one the day of. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it was that they were kind of last minute, but they were there, and then the residents showed up. So I just, you know, perhaps there is room to improve. And then Tristan, you also mentioned the idea of the double-edged sword nature of the social media, and that is a big a big fiasco on people. You know, the Twitter and Facebook format is really bad for arguments and discussions. It really is, and the place to do those discussions are exactly at our council meetings, and you know. So yeah, I think the process worked. Perhaps there is something we can do to it. There's always room for improvement. But I didn't want us to just sweep this into, oh, you know, with our hair on fire running around, oh, this didn't work, when it actually did kind of work. So maybe there's still some residents that would be concerned that don't know, but like we said, we're following the policy right now, and I was going to ask why we don't do it in the Bel Aire Breeze, and I wasn't aware that the state dictates that since the Bel Aire Breeze isn't published as regularly as the Ark Valley, it won't appear in there.
Yeah, a lot of things do have time issues with them, and so in fact sometimes the Ark Valley News only being published once a week can push things for us. You know, but the Wichita Eagle is much more expensive, you know, but it's published every day. So, and I think that, you know, it's the kind of Ark Valley News kind of covers Bel Aire, and that's how it was chosen as the official newspaper. But it's at least once a week. Once every week it's published, where the Breeze is just once a month.
I'm glad I know that, because I don't get the Ark Valley News. I only get the Bel Aire Breeze. So.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you real quick, I just pulled up our Bel Aire Facebook page. 10 hours ago, council meets tonight at 6:30 to discuss communications in 2019 budget. And that wasn't the first time I've seen that. You know, so, you know, that was something that went out. You know, we have all kinds of things here. There's, you know, not one, but two things about future things coming up with the brush site being open that come up right away. Then there is, you know, here's something with the shredding. I'm just flipping through on my phone here. Something that, you know, Chief Atterbury has, or something about a lost dog. Then there's, you know, Jason eating a donut. But, and again, you know, here's, you know, all these, you know, notifications about the, about Shred Day that was coming up beforehand, you know. So So it's out there.
Well, don't they still have the forms to fill out that if they want to know what's for
Yep.
the
Agenda.
for the council meeting and the planning commission?
We still have those, yeah.
Well, why don't they just come in and sign the form and then they're notified?
Yeah.
Just have to fill out the form.
So, there are definitely a lot of options, and I think we're doing a really good job reaching people on social media. I appreciate all of the updates that I see on Facebook and Twitter. I don't think the process is necessarily broken, but I always think that it's good to continue to review those policies and practices and see if they can be even better. I think maybe in the case of some of these planning and zoning things, there might be some opportunity where some inconsistency in notification might be causing some confusion, and that might be worth looking at. But I don't think, our hair is on fire, to quote the mayor.
Well, thank you guys for that. Unless anybody else has anything to discuss about communications, I'm going to move on here at 8:20 under item number 2 of our agenda, which is the.
So you guys are treating me nice here.
Yeah, I told my wife I'd probably be home by 8:30.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah, but the 2019 budget, and again, want to let everybody know, this is preliminary. This is nothing we're voting on next week. This is kind of the, you guys all remember your thesis in college. This is the first draft, okay?
First we're gonna do the land report and then I'll get into budget stuff. And I know.
Do we want to take a quick break?
Yeah, you can. Let's do
Why don't we
that.
do that? Let's take a 5-minute break, and then Justin come back and we'll be gone. But yeah, let's reconvene here, tell you what, at 8:30 by that clock up there. How's that sound?
It's good. Yeah. It's up there. It's not a presentation. It's gonna be, if we want to plug, I doubt we're gonna have time to plug in numbers tonight, but all the fun stuff.
Well, I'm gonna take some video of Ted so I can use it later in his budget video.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't know it's coming yet, but we'll be.
Bring it on.
Russell Waters,
So
anybody
yeah,
need
I'm
the
not
water?
gonna say.
Oh, that'd be
the whole
great.
thing,
Thank you.
but I'll try to send you that.
Thank you, read my mind.
Somebody wants it.
Once you got them take a break, we said we'd all take a break.
Anything you say, but you'll be on video at this.
Are you gonna do like one of those, question answer live?
With Ted,
Yeah.
if I can convince him up there.
Sure.
We do it on, where people can write in on Twitter
Facebook
and
Live,
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Facebook Live.
Yeah. Put me in front of our books, I'll be all right. Off my top of my head, I'm gonna be in trouble.
So this is the thought I did on that, the 3 options that everyone's discussing. I could put those out of poll, but to see what they're,
So Tuesday,
to see what they're, this like, this is something our council is doing.
Tuesday council meeting, the first time I'll Skype in on the council meeting.
Oh, you're gonna Skype in?
Out there.
Cool.
Got to come up this afternoon, so.
Excellent. So will you be up on the screen? Or how will that work?
The computer over here.
Okay.
Yep, so
I'm
you're
just trying to keep the doors open, guys, I'm sorry.
Don't you agree that option?
See, that's what I wondered, if I put out a poll, I
Sheldon,
can't control
the robot
the
thing.
You're gonna have a virtual presence here?
where.
He did the robot thing, the virtual presence, and he stayed here for me because he's such a germaphobe.
Was he trying to sneak it in before you were here?
No, this afternoon, I'm like, our city manager.
No, the watering, the one you guys want.
Open it up.
I'm all right, thank you.
I see, I
Thank
thought you.
Jealous, were you?
Yeah, you guys are doing all the hard labor around here.
I was gonna
We
say.
have to work in the hard job. Well, I saw we got some
Bad
trees
about-
downstairs, so I figured, I saw our new trees downstairs.
bought new ones. We got new ones.
You don't say that.
Hey,
we got old treats, everybody. They just chew a little harder.
Yeah, I
Yeah. And the fizz is on the pop.
Yeah, the kids are gone pop. I still bring my own pop. I can't
Next
have
time
my
I will
own
have to
pop.
sit closer to the candy.
Oh, it's a gamble if you go in that fridge.
You got one of the old ones? That's a big deal. Yeah.
Priorities.
So is there anything good in the candy you like, or do I need to get something different?
Partial to M&M's myself.
It's dangerous having that stuff there.
Do I get to pick from the council goodies since I'm up here today?
Yeah,
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 get
yeah.
the good
Dive in.
Alright. I haven't had dinner yet.
Oh.
Two of us.
Snickers. Bad choice. Bad choice for the day before you come.
I'm in the middle of dinner.
Exactly.
So you gonna be able to do this in 5 minutes?
No. You guys don't want me to do it in 5 because this is probably the richest information the city has to offer right now.
Everybody will wake up,
Everybody get really excited, interesting. I don't know. I get pretty excited about finance, so imagine most people don't.
Is this projector here for your presentation?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if we want, I don't know if we'll have time for that, but I thought it'd be interesting to plug in a few and see what it does.
Look, Austin crackers right there. It's got your name on it.
Peanut butter, that's got protein right there. That's healthy stuff.
All right, so I guess you want to call it back in, or are we okay?
We're,
All right.
do it, let's do it.
So we'll start with the land report. Put a little something together. Page 2. Yearly debt service payments, and Mayor Austin kind of saw what we did in the past and what we got going on in the future. Probably the biggest policy decision you guys will ever have to make, or will make in the next coming year or so, is in 2010 we refinanced a bad situation. The city couldn't handle the debt, so they refinanced. And the way it worked was they kind of said, "What do you want to do?" And they said, "We want to pay no interest until 2020, and then all land sales are going to go on as principal payments." So basically, in 2020, there was going to be a $500,000 increase in our debt. It's funny, we're talking about parks and stuff, but if it wasn't for some refinancing, we'd all be talking about how are we going to cover a new $500,000 coming down the pipe. What we did last year was really smooth out that big hump in our interest and principal payment combined went down. We'll go to page 3. That kind of shows a little better, just basically our debt liability going from where it was all the way down in 2024. Really, this is page 4 is kind of where I was talking about. The dotted red line is where the increase to $500,000 and how the city decided to, or bond council and myself decided to smooth it out and then level off the payment instead of continued growth through the future. And what I said is the biggest thing is that policy is still in place that says any sale we make needs to go on principal. What happens is if you say, well, let's keep it in the PBC and use it to do our regular scheduled payment, then that frees up money in the general to be spent on streets and other things. So that's basically what I'm pointing at right now is currently we don't have any sale money in that PBC, but once we do, that's when I'll bring it to you guys and we'll evaluate, kind of like Councilman Asoff said, is, you know, I want to see how much it's going to lower our principal if we go ahead and make the payment versus we'll basically do a cost benefit on should we spend it on streets or should we pay it off forward. But I just wanted to kind of point out what the 2017 refunding did. I'm pretty proud of it. But the other thing that's important is I believe the next 5 years are really important in the city of Bel Aire as far as budgeting and future budgeting, because we are growing that debt a little bit year after year to get up to a level spot. So you'll see the next 5 years till 2023, when the debt payment levels off, that we need to make up. We need to have room for us to grow to make that payment. As far as page 5, this is pretty much previous land sales. Have done really well in the last 4 years, and look for continued success. It's kind of hard to really say we're going to average so much a year, because it ebbs and flows. Ty knows it ebbs and flows. I think the first 6 months I was here at City of Bel Aire, Ty kept giving me $500,000 checks to deposit. Sometimes it really goes fast, and sometimes it just dries up. It's the nature of the market. But I did want to show you that we are actually making sales, so it looks pretty well. The next several pages, what I did is kind of copied, because I think it's really hard to visualize. I'm a very visual person, as you'll see in a lot of my presentations. I really want you guys to see where we're at. Page 6, 7, and so on is the shaded areas are lots that we own inside each of our developments. So you can kind of understand where we need to sell land at and where we don't. So the park has 31 lots available, and we pay about $43,000 in specials on those lots out of the land bank fund each year. We had a big victory last year. All the village and the village lots are sold out. That's page 7. Page 9, I think, is the landing, and I think we're doing a lot of efforts towards selling that. The important thing to note, and really this is kind of hard to graph, the shaded areas have some sort of special payment associated with them, but the checkered areas, kind of in the top right area, those have zero specials associated with them, so they cost the city nothing to hold.
Why do those lots not have specials?
So when you develop lots, it goes into phases. Phase 1 is pretty much all the houses you see in the landing, which means we'll build them a street, we'll build them a water, sewer, drainage, and then once it's sold out, and Ty probably answers this better, once it's sold out, you go on to phase 2, and then phase 3, and then phase 4.
No infrastructure for those lots right now then?
Well, yeah, so like the shape, so if you drive over there, on Hampton Street, Hampton, it dead ends there, but you see it dead ends here, but you see all that. That's because that drainage pond was put in, and so it affected all of these lots, that drainage does. Mm-hmm. So that's why some of these, like over here, they've just got some drainage.
Yeah, just
special,
drainage.
But no streets, because there's no streets over there, so it varies kind of how.
Yeah, drainage will be assessed larger, but anyway, it's roughly 77 lots. We we pay about $52,000 in specials out of land bank for that area. Elk Creek, relatively few, but a little larger lots. Pretty much the same as the rest. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one or on any of them really. Because it's more of a resource for you guys to just kind of see where we have lots available, and Ty can provide you probably better maps, but it helps me when it's simplified like this. This is farmland in the land bank, about we say total value about $8 million. We pay about $227,000 specials. A majority of that is the land across the street into the plots 4 and 5. So. But around surrounding city halls, probably all of it actually. I don't think we owe any specials on anything else, so, yeah.
This isn't all being farmed though, right?
No, I imagine, I just called it farmland. I don't, pasture land, whatever you want to.
I know some of these we do.
Yeah, some of them I,
Yeah, we have it zoned agricultural,
Yeah.
lower the tax, yeah.
Right, get that, okay.
and then we get into the PVC lots, and this is where I kind of had the discussion. If we sell a lot, we'll come to you guys and figure out exactly what we want to do with that. So when you say, and these also lots carry a little higher special per year cost, but we pay about $114,000. what's important about the special costs and the PVC lots, and you'll see in my presentation and a lot of the stuff I'll give you is PVC is not in the land bank, so it comes out of general fund money. So there's a little difference. And then the land surrounding the PVC lots map, we own substantial acreage there. So all in total, about $19 million in value in our land. That's page 13, if you're following. We owe about $473,000 in specials per year. Now, most of that, 300 less PVC land, we pay out of the land bank. What's nice about the land bank is it's self-sufficient right now, meaning we've had lot sales that pays for those specials so that it doesn't take a hit on the land on the general fund. And you'll see the next slide or my next presentation why
I just want to point out real quick.
why that's important.
Say, so the 473, I mean, that's what, 11 or 12 mils
Yeah.
of our budget is.
So when we sell a lot out of the land bank, we don't necessarily apply that lot sale to principal on.
No, that's held in the land bank to pay special costs.
Okay.
Only PVC lots.
Now, in the past, we've gotten it pretty high, and we would make a payment. But again, that's a policy decision that, at what, do we want to keep it self-sufficient so the general fund doesn't have to subsidize it? Do we want to get to a certain level and then, like Ted was saying, pull a little bit out or something? I mean, those are all policy decisions that Ted will kind of cover for.
Yeah, really, do you either want to, use general fund money or land? It's pretty. You either put the land sale in the general fund and use that to pay specials, or the way the land bank's designed is kind of it's an easier budgeting tool for you guys, so we don't have to keep projecting how much we're going to need to do. We'll get into a lot of that, but so in summary, about 17,500,000 principal remaining. Interest about 6.4. Yearly specials, we went over that. Average annual land sales, which I hated to even put that because it's really hard to determine. We might do crazy good one year and bad the other, but and then the current land value, if you're wondering about the totals that they're present on page 14. Real interesting stuff, and and I think I got around. We can talk about whenever you want, but I really want to go to this page here, kind of the beginning of the 2019 budget season. This is something that I step out of my comfort zone, doing a lot of forecasting because I'm a risk manager by trade. That's what I do for the city. I make sure that our doors are always open, and so. But I like to push the envelope a little bit, and you guys really need to understand what we do today affects 5 years from now. But I'll preface it with I manage on the conservative side. So if you see some numbers you don't like in out years, that's why, because I'm really trying to make it so not too conservative, but I want to make it so we're talking in reality and not that we're going to grow 20% every year and we can do everything. So
Yes, we don't want to surprise you.
We don't want to.
Oh, we thought we'd bring all that money in.
The
So
worst.
I appreciate that.
The worst case scenario is me asking for a budget amendment in November and saying I misread the deal. But this report here, and just real fast, next budget meeting, in between now and next budget meeting, we'll be sending you probably a 26-page document with each line item drilled out for each department. And you'll see what we did the last 2 years, what we spent on each line item, and what we're proposing this year, and what we budgeted for this year, and what we're proposing for next year. And then we'll go through the whole budget. It'll be very tedious. We'll have our blinders on to this budget alone, so that we make sure we properly, are spending what we need to spend. This takes the blinders off and says, all right, where does our money go? Let's get started with page 1. Good budgeting is basically the revenues you take in 1 year, you spend in 1 year, okay? So revenues are very important. Property taxes make up about 48% of all our revenue. I'm projecting about 5% increase, which adds $129,000 to what we did. Last year we did 7, so if you want to say, okay, maybe we're going to do 7 again this year, you can add about $50,000 because that's pretty much what 2% is. We won't know for sure until June 15th, which is going to be really when the budget season really starts, when you know your revenues and continue. But right now I'm guessing 5 to be a little on the conservative side. Sales tax, I have an average annual growth rate on that, but I usually just say straight 2%. Most cities won't do 2%, but we're a growing population, and population is part of the share of the county taxes that we get. So that's one factor I take into it. We get about 1.2 from property or sales tax from the county 1 cent sales, and then the next big revenue source, about another 23%, would be the city generated revenues, franchise fees, fines, permits, licenses, registration fees, grants, miscellaneous stuff. If you notice, I have two different numbers go with the one with the totaled one. So we got about $5.7 million in 2019 to spend. Okay. Turn to page 2. Now what I'm doing is taking the major categories and deducting from that revenue line. Here's our 2019 land debt or debt payments, and we can go over these in really detailed, or everybody kind of knows. We have a land debt, we have city hall, pool debt, and then 2014 street projects, some rail. The two big ones that are land debt related are, the PVC special assessments, and then Terra Verde shortfall, which we have to budget for to make up for those specials. So that's about $2.3 million, which leaves the remaining $3.4 million to be spent on operations of the city. If you turn to page personnel costs, usually what I ask is, do you want to fire anybody? That's really the only thing that's going to move a lot of times we do a 10% increase in health insurance because last year we saw a 12. I'm really hoping we don't see that again, but I budgeted for that. Capers contributions are increasing a little bit for 2019, but it's about 2.1 or 38% of our budget goes to personnel. Next, you go to contractual expenditures, insurance, utilities, financial software. Contractuals are about $671,000. You'll see a lot of contractual expenditures in the next meeting, and we'll say, hey, why are we spending this much? But if you look, the reality is the contractual, it's really difficult to cut because a lot of them are insurance. How are we going to cut insurance without tearing down a building and saying it's land? And it's really only 12% of our budget, which is important to really keep in line with your contractuals. But if you really want to make hay, it's kind of indifferent. We can save here and there, but if you want to do a lot of damage, we're going to have to look at elsewhere, I guess. Commodities, the way I explain commodities are, commodities give the tools to our employees to do their job. They fuel our police officers' cars. They do a lot of different office supplies, that kind of thing. We spend about $309,000 on commodities, or 5% of the budget. That only leaves about $264,000 left after that if you take revenues minus expenditures. Every city deals with limited resources, but what we're doing now is prioritizing where we want our limited resources to go. As you see on page 4, I zeroed out everything just because that's what we got to decide in the next 2 or 3 workshops. Is right now I'm having meetings with department heads. They're what I call budgeted capital outlays, are kind of minor. We bought a ATV last year with one. A lot of the minor equipment that parks and public works and PD and a lot of them need. You'll have some proposals in front of you with quotes, and you'll have to decide, do we want to do this or that? That's really how the budgeting process works with us. For the and I want to touch on just a little bit, because I know in the last council meeting we talked about, is this budgeted or not? There's 2 different funds that are non-budgeted in the city of Bel Aire. That's a capital improvement plan, It's the equipment replacement plan. Wouldn't, like the dump truck. The dump truck was planned, but it's really just a plan. You guys have the ultimate control of every cent and every dollar in those two funds because it has to be approved by the council as that specific item you guys purchasing. I can't touch it. I can't put expenses in there and then do nothing with it. It has to be approved by you guys. So when someone says it's budgeted, we have the money, well, you can always say, yes, maybe it was planned, but I would like to see it a different way. So that's just for you guys to understand that the capital improvement plan and the equipment plan are basically your funds. Only the staff is going to give you some really good reasons why we need to fund a certain thing. And that's really what I have in this document, which I spent, and Dave, our Public Works Director, spent some good time. I really wanted to make it a little easier for you guys to understand what we're purchasing, what's on the plan, what's coming up. Here's a list of our, Dave, I'll go to Dave. Dave was really good. He went equipment by equipment and literally told you about the condition of it right now as it is and kind of planned when we're going to need to replace this. And that's what all I did with the top sheet was I took what their recommendation was and stuck them on here so that you guys understand that, yes, we got some stuff coming up in the next 5 years that we might want to consider funding. And again, that's we can get into a big discussion on when stuff needs to be replaced, when it doesn't. The way I do my best practice, especially police cars, a lot of companies will say 100,000 miles, and I understand that policy, it's good policy, but I also track how much maintenance and repair we're spending on these vehicles. Because I say if the vehicle's at 70,000 miles, but we're spending over 35% in maintenance every year on this vehicle, it's time to get rid of the vehicle. It makes no sense. So you'll see on each police vehicle, or most of, actually each of them, you'll see a maintenance as percent, or maintenance as a percent of residual value. And we have two that are, especially one that is just absolutely ridiculous that we're spending another $1 on it. So you'll see within car 26 and 27 are really starting to weigh on, and this, and notice, that's 2018. We're only 5 months in 2018, so it's pretty scary when you see the maintenance and stuff go up on these things. So that's in as maybe a potential buy next year, is a police vehicle that we keep spending maintenance on. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I just wanted you guys to review the equipment replacement plan. We'll have plenty of time to talk to that later. We can go forward on page 4 of this one, of this handout here. What I said is, we have a lot of priorities, and I know $264,000, not a lot of money. I understand that. There is good news in that, and that's on page 5. We have a generous ending balance on our general fund, only because pretty much because we refinanced last year and were able to capture some savings in year 1. But the biggest thing, and I don't want you to get scared about the $200,000 either, because all this is assuming we're going to use up all our budget authority. And when I say budget authority, sometimes we'll budget $2,000 and we might only spend $1,400, $1,500, $1,600, but we want to make sure we have enough money in the budget for that where we need help.
Oh, I had a duplicate of it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So the surplus we have, this is kind of a one-time lump sum that we have that's extra that we can allocate if we want to.
Well,
but it's not something we would expect to recur every year. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well,
the difference between the 30% and the 49%.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. That's kind of where my 5-year forecast and what we're going to get into now really make a difference. Is how do we responsibly spend down our surplus to 30%.
Okay.
The next page 6. You guys, and we had a great discussion about the park, but when I hear a lot about the park, I worry about 2022. And so I don't worry, because my worries are always when the debt's going to hit our budget. So as you can see on 37th Street project, it's going to hit on 2020. So that's my big worry, is what's happened 2 years ago and when it's going to hit our budget. The park, just if you guys are wondering, if you decided to go forward with it, it wouldn't be a payment in this year, next year. The first time you would see it is in 2022. So you could potentially build a park in 2019. It would have 2 years to grow before we even make a payment on it. So that's something to consider as well. But the 3 areas I highlighted on page 6, the first one is, yes, that's the land debt going up steadily to that. When we smoothed out that $500,000 bubble, that's kind of what it is. So that's something we want to keep our eye on. 37th Street, that's the redo project that we did, and 53rd, that'll hit in 2020, which will be about $115,000 a year, and that's a conservative estimate. Another thing I want to point out is Woodlawn's a big deal. It's a big deal for the city, and that's the Woodlawn engineering is going to hit in 2021, and the construction will hit our budget in 2022. So without a lot of wiggle room, there's a lot of ways you can look at this. Like I said when I were doing the land sale, if you guys adopt the policy that we're going to use some land sales to pay off that debt, that frees up a lot of money. We can easily skid through this 5 years of when stuff's hitting our budget and fund everything we need to fund. Another thing that I point to in a 5-year is basically our land bank right now is self-sufficient. It can pay for everything, but up until year 2020, as you can see, I have $173,000 having to be transferred out of the general fund to the land bank to cover specials. Now, I imagine we're going to have land sales to generate that, so that becomes a zero. That saves us $3,000. We're going to sell land. It's not gonna remain $220,000 of city-owned land and specials we're gonna have. It's gonna go down, but I can't really project it too well to make that happen. As well as taxes will go down as well. So that land-related expenses is pretty key to growing comfortably in our budget. Good news. There's always good news, but page 7. This is taking a 23-page forecast to a 1-pager, so bear with me. Revenues, I have us growing property tax growth the first two years, 2019, 2020, 5%, and then 4% throughout. It's pretty conservative, guys. Sales tax 2% throughout. Personnel, I have just a moderate increase and a 10% health care raise every year going out. No new employees. That scares me. If we're growing at the rate we're growing, we're going to need new employees. So this is all just to inform the council of what we got coming down the pipe. Contractuals actually go down, and I'd give you a reason why. Our home incentives are coming off. So that's about $100,000 that's being not spent on home incentives and being spent on contractual expenses. Commodities, I kind of just hit different areas at the rate of inflation, and then we just went through all the debt service, what's coming on, what's coming off. I zeroed out our transfers out and capital outlay, and if we literally just fund debt and operations, we'll be just fine. We'll end 2023 with 32% of reserves.
Question?
Yes.
So the forecasted expenses for your spending, does that include any dollars in these zeroed out categories here for those years?
No.
Okay.
And that's why I'm showing you this, and I have it on computer, and we can plug in whatever we want. Okay. And that's why most people don't like showing this, because it's all projected. It's a very optimistic perspective. It's very projected. If we grow 7% throughout those years, we can do a lot with a lot of things. But if we're being conservative, we're actually covered if we just stay
Someone buys Sierra Verde, we're,
Yeah.
we can do a lot.
But we're only covered because we have that surplus in our fund
Exactly.
right now. Looks like in 2021, we're starting to spend more than we're bringing in, which is a bit scary.
The two things I want to caution you on that type of, and I kind of alluded to it, is we're never going to spend all our budget authority in 1 year. So there's always going to be some savings. So the spending, it takes into account that we're going to spend all our budget authority, everything we think we're going to spend. Also, it takes into, the revenues takes into account that we're going to be growing at a moderate to slow pace. If you want me to, and I didn't want to show, we can jump on the computer and you can play with it, and I can send it to you if you want. It's actually kind of fun to play with. But what this pretty much shows is we want to be very careful in how much we spend down our revenues in these early years to make sure we can have enough to pay for the wood lawn and all those other things in out years.
So forecasting the growth, you're just talking just based on growth with taxes, right?
Property tax growth.
So we're not showing any kind of increase in from the sale of land, whether it be commerce,
no, none of the sale.
Lots out in Central Park, any of that land sales, right?
None of the sales hit the general fund. And all my revenue projections are on page 8 and 9. I didn't include the second half column, and I can I'll send everybody this, and we can make it kind of the growth patterns. I have a year-to-year growth out here, but I wanted to be able to put it in one page. In our, really the city finance policy has 30% target, 17% minimum, so 30% is actually really good for a city. I'm not saying we, definitely can't go under it, but as a comfort level, that's where I usually like to be. And every single city in the city of Kansas, their 5-year forecast looks similar to this. Look, we're going under, so please don't take this as we're gonna, it's really on hard times, because, and that's why I kind of was.
This is almost worst case scenario.
It's almost worst case scenario.
It's good to plan that way, because we don't know what the market's gonna do. We don't have a crystal ball.
And that's really what the 30% is higher than a lot of other cities, because we're so market risk for homes that we like to keep somewhat of a large reserve balance. However, I would say that's pretty.
The reserve balance, does that affect our credit rating as a
Very
city
much
to get
so.
our
Very much
interest rates
so.
and things like that?
The
So
other-
30% is pretty important for that.
The other
right?
thing that, the other reason I really want to show you guys this is because every time we go out to bond, they ask about, I saw you dipped into your reserves a little. Are you going to continue that they're very concerned when someone does that, because that makes them a little nervous, and I assure them every time my counsel's on the same page as I am. We understand that, this is, we have an excess, we're spending it on one-time expenditures, and that's what in the last 2 budget cycles have been, is say, hey, we have a little bit of excess, let's throw it over the street and do projects with that, not necessarily let's do $2 million in projects and say, okay. And that's why I've stressed it the last 2 is if we're going to transfer out some money, let's do one-time projects. And I'm almost I really want to propose, I know the street fund is very nice to say, but really we want to throw it into the CIP, the capital improvement program, because then it's non-budgeted, and situations like 53rd come up that straddle 2 different budget fiscal years. It makes it really hard on me because we might have to do a budget amendment, but that also might be an option. Maybe we fund that out of there, which leaves a little more money in the street fund than we thought we would have, and we use some of that money next year instead of maybe transferring so much. So there's a lot of different ways we can do this, guys. I'm not trying to scare you at all. I'm also trying to say to S&P that my council knows what I'm talking about, and knows that we share in the same 5-year forward thinking. This is the only way I can show you five years forward. If you guys want to see that. So
This is great.
yeah.
What are the limitations on the capital improvement? There are limitations on where and how that can be spent. Is that right? I thought with regard to roads, there's a limitation on.
A lot of limitations happen if so a lot of cities will put grant funds inside their CIP. I'll double check to make sure. I just think it's a lot easier method of funding different projects. Also, you can size up projects in the CIP with each other and say, no, let's fund this one versus this one, or whatever, go off need, instead of having a set project you're thinking of, and then we just transfer that amount to the street fund and pay it. So I'll double check. I don't know quite.
Okay, so the CIP, it gives us more flexibility.
A lot more on an accounting standpoint,
right.
Because it's allowed to stretch fiscal years.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the best prices are in October, November, and that's what we took advantage of. But the problem with that is your invoices roll in December, January, and that makes it a little difficult for us.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is great. I mean, this is I think this gives us a good vision of what's coming our way, and I appreciate immensely that you are erring on the side of being more conservative and kind of skirting that line of what is the worst case scenario.
And Ty and I talk a lot about this plan, and I think we might get the county's official results. It might be 9%, and you can throw a lot of that helps out a lot. But you guys understand
You're talking sales tax, right?
No, property tax. So
property.
Evaluations, the county sends out final
evaluations.
assessments.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
I know it's getting late.
Yeah, and like what we were talking about, when I was talking about the park, the funds would be there. So in this budget includes the special assessments that we're paying on the 15 acres that are over here. We've got a contract on that to sell that to the senior housing. So if that sells, then those specials go away. And so when I was saying that it's in the budget, it is in there as a plan because we haven't sold it yet. If it gets sold, then that frees up whatever we're paying on special assessments now. So that's where we were talking about. Then the policy is yours. Is okay. We've got that extra 70,000 or 80,000 or whatever it was. Do we invest in the park? Do we put it towards streets? Do we, how does that play out? And that happens every year because of land sales and special assessments that go off and things like that. The other thing in there is we've got 200 and some thousand Tierra Verde special assessments, and if we can get something happening there and start selling the property and they start paying the specials, then those come out. But we don't know when that's going to happen and if it'll happen, so we can't really plan for that. But those things will come up every budget year. When you look at budgets, things are totally different because things are sold and such.
And that's what Ty and I were talking about. This really helps identify your strengths, your weaknesses, and what you need to improve. And it's hard to hide them when it's all out in front of you like this. So that helps you guys as we go into the more blinder. Let's take care of this year. It kind of helps you understand where we're at and what we're talking about. The only I guess we don't have to really pass this out, but, Betty, you done?
Pardon me?
You tired?
No, the mayor said he had to be home by 8:30.
Yeah, it's not happening.
And I'll just show you, I can send this out to anybody, or I can, there's a pretty cool program out there, it costs like $5,000 for a city to do, but it lets you, make a budget, so the city can make their own budget, pretty much. I thought I could do one on Excel, which I can't, but, we didn't purchase it. But this is kind of what it mimics, and I'll kind of show you guys just a few of the possibilities of it.
There you go. Thank you.
So let's say we make, or actually let's do revenues first. And let's say we grow at 7%. I guess we'll go to 7% here too. Just making that change, and we'll head over to the summary. These are all linked, so then we're ending 2023 46%. We're all in the red except one year, and that's mainly looks like due to the Woodlawn project construction. Here's the and why I said, and your guys has got a tough decision, because it's if we, let's say we make $1 million in sales and we choose to spread that $1 million over 2 years to relieve the general fund of a debt payment obligation. So we'll subtract $500,000 here in 20 and 21.
And Ted, I'll just tell you right now, if we,
Yeah.
not if, but when we sell $1 million in land, or next big payment, I would certainly welcome your suggestion, advice, as to where you think it would be best, and maybe give an option or two to.
To me, I play with this stuff all the time. It's all priorities on your part. If you guys want to improve street, the thing this kind of shows you, in the general scheme of things, shows me is if we want to reduce debt at accelerated levels, if we want to transfer a lot to streets and rebuild every street, and if we want to build a park and maintain equipment.
Yes.
You gotta pick about two. That's what this tells me. And that's just what my trained eye or what I see in my things. So that's where the council gets the great decision to make those choices. And the first decision is when we do sell $1 million of land, and you guys got to either say, let's hold it out, or let's do that, and that's something I can't really tell, and I can't project for you.
Be a great problem
That's
to
why.
have.
Exactly.
That's why there's in no way I was going to give you a sheet that is doing what I'm doing right now, because I'd be tipping, I don't.
That happens.
That's not my business.
So is this, when you do that, does that trickle down everything as far as like the specials that we're paying on the current land? Let's say we sell $1 million worth of city-owned land that we're paying specials on. I mean, there's more addition basically.
Yeah, so I'm talking $1 million in PVC land, just for reference. You can go to page 12. So say we sell lot 10 right here in the PVC. It's valued at 1.06. Okay, That's a bad example. How about farm? Anyway, we're not paying specials on that currently, but most PVC lots we might. So it'll relieve us. So that's when you go down here in 2020, and you see PVC specials and taxes. Let's say it goes down. I guess no. Actually, you go to expenses down in 2020, and you go down to specials, and you say minus $20,000. So you trickle that down that way. Yeah, a lot of it does.
When we sell land, if we choose to apply that to the debt instead of spending it, how does that affect our future debt payments? Does it reduce them each year or each month going forward?
People who buy bonds get money first. Just to let you know. It does a lot. It helps a lot. I can have that projection for you. But what it does is just knocks off years at the end. It doesn't lower your total payment a little bit. It'll lower the interest because there's less principal to garner that interest. It lower the interest amount you pay on the total out principal. But so we spent about $4 million of prepaid interest in that from 2010 to 2017. This is off the top of my head. We cut off a year on the principal, on the total land debt, and I think we saved around $6 million in interest costs through the life of the loan. So you do it's a good policy, but at the cost of other priorities.
Yep. Okay.
That's basically. And
I was
that's the
curious
way
how that worked as compared to a traditional loan.
Yeah.
If there were differences.
About the same. And the reason we wanted to level off in our new one is because it levels off around 1.5 million. If we do nothing but pay just what's owed, we can say in 2023 that 1.5 million is owed until the end of time, or until 2023, sorry. And everybody knows that, and it stops being how much are we paying this year, how much are we paying next year. It's pretty much just 1.1, and that's it. If we pay off principal, that will fluctuate again. It'll go down, not it'll go up, sorry. It'll go down, but you'll never, every year we'll say, okay, this year it's only 40% that we have to pay of our budget instead of 50, So I kind of see the value in saying you got 1.5, goes out the door when we come in, or every year. The marketing piece of that, not the value.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, so now that we've played a little bit with money, so let's plug in the park there. 90 is probably about right, but let's put 100 just to be on the safe side.
And this is still with the 7% growth?
Actually, yeah, let's just put in 7% growth instead of what I have, all right? I think that's probably better than, I don't want to project what you guys will do with a land sale or even project a land sale, so I'll end with yeah, just want to double check. I got 7%. Yeah. And so we still have 43%. If, however, you're right. We're still zeroing out these capabilities of transfer out the streets and whatnot. So it really doesn't. If we grow here's the.
What if we just plug that in as if it were last year, 397?
Where's that at?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't want to scroll there. I'll scroll. This is probably going to be not very accurate because there's going to be a lot of different things go on in these years, but we'll be about 14. That's again 7% growth, but other that's with spending all your budget authority on all your personnel, contractuals, commodities.
Going up.
Yeah, it's really hard to say, because if, God forbid, Ty leaves in 1 year or someone leaves, and you always have fluctuations in work and employees, and that saves money. It never really costs you more. So I usually, when I plan personnel, it's pretty much to make sure we can make payroll every year. So I can cut that back if you want. We can get really creative.
So I know we haven't had very much in the past, but let's say if we were to add commercial outlets that are paying at the 30% rather than the 11% of residential, would that be increasing more than the 7%?
You'd grow at slightly larger rate, of course.
And what's kind of been our average growth rate over the last 2 or 3 years?
So I think Mayor Slides in his speech had the actual. It's been 9 to.
Yeah, it's been remembered.
5. It was like 5, 9, and then 7 something last year.
Okay.
There,
So 7's kind of an average then.
Here we go. No, it's
No. Maybe it didn't make it to.
I don't know that it's on there.
Oh, there it is, right there. So 15 we did 6, 9, and then almost 8.
So, yeah, 7's be a decent calculated risk.
Yeah.
And that again is and these are without making the investment push that we're hoping for.
Yeah, I thought the last 2 years it had been 7 something. So
Yeah.
you can see those at the front of the published budgets for each year going back.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the document section on the website.
Yeah, I've looked at those. I just couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's just
Remember?
It's just where you need to go check it.
Trying to think if the bit. Oh, here we go. This is where your money's at. If we make one big sale in the land bank, we should be cleared out as far as the next 5 years should be taken care of. So if we just do that, we're at go back up to 23%. So 7% growth rate plus enough land sales to cover land bank, you're right there. And that's being conservative on, that means I'm saying we're going to grow office supplies at 3% or 2% a year, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. So this is worst case scenario on all our operational expenditures, but so that's what, when you play with this, and I'll send anybody this that they want, you can find little spots that if one thing goes right, it makes the day. So
Cool.
unless anybody else has anything, that's just kind of a general understanding of where I'm at and what we see.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Yeah, and we're going to identify much more than $260,000 that we had left over tonight. I'm just trying to show you, okay, we have a certain amount of revenue, we minus debt, we minus all the things we must do as a city. That leftover part is what's most cherished. It's crazy to think that I can plug in a 5% growth rate. Most cities won't even plug in 1%. They'll go 0.5. And what happens there is every city has their troubles because that in money, what they're wanting to do stuff, gets gobbled up by healthcare costs. A lot of the rising costs that it is to do business. Ours is allowing us to keep growing even faster. However, we're serving more people.
I say we noticed a lot of neighboring communities in the last couple of years have had to raise their mills.
Yeah.
To cover that exact.
That's exactly what it is. So, My office is always open. If you want to come plug some numbers in with me, I'll let you know. Come on in.
Actually love that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Ty never knocks, but really, I do a lot more than numbers. I'll tell you that.
Even wants Tristan to do a tweet along, but she won't do it.
The only thing I want.
With a calculator.
The only thing I want is Ty not to take the Sunrise kids straight to the police department and just say, hey, let's go to the finance. There's a few nerds in there, Ty, that would get a kick out of the finance
City Hall
office.
tour doesn't really.
No, he said these people will do the numbers.
Spreadsheets, kids, yeah.
Ty doesn't even like it.
Well, Ted, thank you.
No, the last thing I'll say is please don't be scared and run for the hills or anything like this. This is actually a lot of people just put it in their budget and nobody looks at it. Trying something different. We're going to try to tackle this because I do see that the next 5 years are very important for the city, and I think everybody needs to be involved in when we plan something, how that affects everything else. Also, it helps you celebrate the victories when someone tight says, 10 years of sale. I really get pretty excited when he comes in my office and said that. So this allows you to celebrate the victories more too, I hope.
Excellent. Ted, we really appreciate your enthusiasm for this.
Oh yeah, love it.
And again, just want to let everybody know, because I know we've got a lot of new council members, how this works. Jack, I'm going to ask you to correct me if I'm wrong here. Is it in July? Sorry, time looking around you. In July, is it that we have to vote on publishing the budget, or is it August?
August 25th. Yeah. It needs to be turned into the county.
Yeah, so we'll have until then, and then that's publishing it, but then we actually don't, after it's published, we still have, right?
I usually include it, and I know I sent it out about a month. There's
Right.
a calendar with the exact dates,
Yeah.
what we're going to do. And those dates are subject to change other than we
Right.
need to adopt a
There's
budget.
publishing, and yeah.
Adopt it, 10 days need to pass, and then we can have a public hearing, official public hearing, close the hearing, and then we can adopt.
Right, and once we adopt it, we can lower things, but we cannot raise things.
Exactly.
Which is why we want to be a little extra for that, so. I did want to ask one other thing before we go. I know we've been here a long time, and I appreciate all the conversation tonight. Have had some conversation, I know everybody's aware of what the conversation with the HOA and our 9 lots. I would like to ask that we call a special meeting that includes an executive session in advance of our June 5th meeting. I think that would be pretty important so that we can really talk about realistic options so that we can take action at the June 5th meeting as an informed group and move forward with that. I know the 3rd and 4th, I know Councilmember Hawes is out of town. Looking if we want to go, we do have 5 weeks, and with this month, do we want to look at, say, Tuesday the 29th, Wednesday the 30th, or Thursday the 31st? And I'm not anticipating I'm thinking 30 minutes, don't you think? Maybe 40, but.
I'm unavailable on the 30th and 31st.
You are or are not?
Are not available.
Okay, what about the 29th?
29th, Monday.
Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think
The 28th is the holiday.
28th is.
Oh, 28th is Memorial Day, yeah.
Yep.
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
good
What
with-
about the 1st?
First is not
The
available.
first is a Friday.
Right.
I can't on the 29th and the 30th. For the 28th.
Well, do we want to, let me throw that out there, if we want to go Friday the 1st, I would recommend that we do like an 8 a.m. one.
I'm out of town on the 1st and 2nd as well.
I am too.
So
The first, yeah.
Well, what about the 4th? That's a Monday.
Yeah, I'm out of town that day too. I'm out of town that whole weekend.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm hearing the
how
29th.
soon could we have the special meeting? Do we have the information to?
Well, it's in process.
Yeah.
We're still gathering.
Okay.
What if we were to go the 29th? That's, less than a week away.
I can do the 29th.
29th. We can do it right at 5 o'clock, guys, if you want.
The
What do you think?
29th of May?
Uh-huh.
I thought he was gonna be gone.
No? I think the 29th is one day we'll all be here.
I'm okay on the 29th. I thought you had a problem on the 29th,
No, the 28th and 30th.
but not the 29th. Okay.
Not
Okay, why don't we go ahead and set it for, is 5 PM too early?
Could we do 6 o'clock?
Let's do 6 o'clock on the 29th. I would ask then, Ty and Jack, if you guys can do the posting that we need to do. You guys have enough time, don't you, to announce a special meeting? I think, 2 days, whatever that state
6
statute.
p.m.?
2 days.
6 PM, yeah. And would ask, we'll meet in here, during formal, and we'll immediately go into executive session. And so, probably don't even need to.
And just to be clear, the format is like a normal city council
Correct.
meeting. It's just a
Correct.
special.
This will be, I'm not gonna do the pledge, I'm not gonna do the welcoming and all that, but we'll
Just call to order.
call to
Talk
order.
about the subject
Yep.
and then the specific reasons for executive session, and then we'd go into executive session.
So does this have the opportunity for public?
Yep.
We won't address citizen concerns at that meeting. Okay.
Just be able to bring everybody up to date on what has happened, and, Ty and I were talking today, and I laid out options over on this side and options here, and there's a bunch of them. And you guys need to be made aware of what all has transpired.
Your legal obligations and all that, so that's why we want to give you the information in an executive session where you have attorney-client privilege to think about those kind of obligations and issues.
And what's nice too about doing this on the 29th, I would ask that Councilmember Benaj and Haas maybe kind of let us know which way they're leaning. If they know, I'm hoping we can all kind of move into a cohesive group, since you guys will miss the meeting on the 5th. Okay? Anything else that we need to talk about tonight?
Holy cow.
Someone come up with some, just watch Betty freak out, this will be fun.
I don't know where you got that from. I'm here.
He's there the 5th.
I'm
Oh,
here.
you are there, I thought you said you were going on the
Fourth.
4th, okay.
First through the fourth.
Okay, then Councilmember Haas will need to let us know which way he's thinking.
Okay, I thought 3 of us. Gosh.
Yeah. Oh, are you gonna miss the 5th as well?
No!
You said 3 of us!
Because you said him.
You said these 2
She's
were
not the only one, like
gone,
3
so
here.
All
I'm
right,
I'm good.
we're done, get out, we got